Will you follow me when the sky starts to change? Yeah, we won't be afraid. We'll never be the same again.
You're streaming with the Fantasy Follow. Week 4 of fantasy football. The weekend is here. It's time for Sunday's action, not that far away. This is the Saturday Star Show, and it starts right now. It's a big day of football. You can do this. Make those good decisions. There's never a better time than this week. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Follow. This is TFF Live Saturday Stars, getting you ready for all your football tomorrow, Sunday, for Week 4 fantasy football. A lot of great games to go. The content for our show tonight is the top matchups for this weekend's play, but of course, we're here for your chat questions all show long. So by all means, if you're with us, it's pinned at the top of the chat. The live chat is open. We'll be taking your questions all show long. Even if we're doing other content, we'll mix the content in throughout the show. But if there are chats there, we'll do our best to get to those as soon as possible. And I do see already we have some chats already here for us to start the show, so let's get right to it. Starting out with Rob Navarro, one of our regulars. Welcome back, Rob. You say, is Ryan Tannehill worth playing tomorrow? PPR. Here's my thoughts on Ryan Tannehill. Without A.J. Brown, without Julio Jones, it should be a pretty good matchup going up against Indianapolis. I don't think it's a terrible – I'm sorry, not Indianapolis. They're going up against the New York Jets, looking at my charts there. I think the matchup is fairly decent. We can put the numbers up on the left side of your screen. If you like the numbers and like looking at the matchups, here are fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. And the New York Jets, where do we fall? Right in the – oh, actually, they are actually relatively low. I did not realize they were that low. Second fewest fantasy points to the quarterback spot. Perhaps because of game script, most likely. Teams not needing to throw the ball against them. But nonetheless, you expect Tennessee to have the advantage tomorrow. But I would agree this is more than likely probably a Derrick Henry game than it is a Ryan Tannehill game. And without his best two receivers, my thoughts are this. If you have a better option or another option, I think it's worth looking elsewhere this week other than Ryan Tannehill. I know that I'm doing that in my leagues where I can. In one of my leagues where I don't have another option, so I have to play him. I do have another option, but it's Justin Fields, and I don't really feel like that's a better option in that particular situation. So I do feel that if you have another option to go to, or if you want to stream off the waiver wire, that's something, obviously, tonight's show is called Saturday Stars, where we talk about the top matchups for this weekend at every spot, including the quarterback spot. So we'll go through all of the potential players that you might be able to stream, whether you have them or whether they're available. If you have to go with Tannehill, I think you just kind of hope for the best at this point, understanding that, they're not playing a tough team, and hopefully he's able to get something going. But at the same time, I don't know if there's big expectations for Tannehill this week. I hope that helps you out there, Rob. Welcome back to the stream. Glad to have you with us. Kyle Ellis would rather play Kirk Cousins if he could, and Rob Navarro says he is not available. Garoppolo, Winston, and Darnold are. Sam Darnold is one of the players that I will have in our Saturday Stars rundown of players. So I think that is a possibility in this situation. We will get to that in a little bit after we go through the rest of these chats. Kyle Ellis, one of our regulars. Welcome back, Kyle Ellis, to the stream. You say 10-team PPR, 1 QB league, 6 points per touchdown. Drop Goddard or drop Tannehill. This is my thought here is that if you're going to drop one of these two players, which one of them is going to be the more difficult to replace? I think that probably Tannehill has more long-term value than perhaps a Dallas Goddard does. At the tight end position, streaming tight ends, it's a dime a dozen, really. And I don't think that Dallas Goddard is necessarily a whole lot above someone like what person that might be on the waiver wire now, like a Dalton Schultz or Dawson Knox. Some of these tight ends that are kind of starting to get onto the radar, but you're not really sure where they're going. I don't know that the situation in Philadelphia is all that much better than that. You still have Zach Ertz there, although I don't think it's huge. I don't know that either one of them are in line for anything great fantasy-wise. What I will do is I will look up I will look up Dallas Goddard's numbers here over on my other screen just because I want to take a look. He is, let's see, this is not what I'm looking for. I want, let me see if I can find what I'm looking for here real quick. I want the stat leaders. There they are. Let's see where Dallas Goddard actually falls right now in the rankings among tight ends and see if there are other players in his range that you might have a shot at. Dallas Goddard currently 9th, tight end 9, which is not all that bad. But you look around, and Dawson Knox is tight end 6. Dalton Schultz was tight end 5. These are probably players that either were available on your waiver wire or still are. I think out of all of them, we talked about a little bit on our Waiver Tuesday show. I think Dalton Schultz is probably the one rest of season that I like the best in terms of the players in that group. You got a Tyler Conklin there who had a nice game last week, but it might, who knows if it was just a game or if it's something to continue. Goddard's production target-wise, 5, 2, and 4 the first 3 games. Nothing really to speak of, and not a whole lot different than some of the, streaming tight ends and the players that are in that tier of tight ends, it's so difficult. Fantasy points he had, looking in let's put this in PPR mode just so I can get an idea. 14, 4, and 9. So, okay. I would probably take 2 out of those 3 for sure at the tight end spot. But who do you need more? Do you have other options at either spot where dropping one of these guys is better than the other? Or if this is your only quarterback and your only tight end, then you're stuck either way. I'm thinking that probably, to me, I'd probably take more of a shot on the tight end and drop Goddard and keep Tannehill. I feel like of these two players, if you want to look at it this way, which one is more likely to be instantly picked up once they hit the waiver wire after you drop them? It's probably Tannehill, even though he hasn't played all that well so far this year. I think there's more potential there for more good play the rest of the year long than there might be for Goddard, who I have a feeling might be a little bit more up and down. So if you have to drop one of these two, if these are your only two choices without knowing the rest of your roster, to me, probably Goddard is what my thought would be. But like I always say, you guys know your rosters better than anybody. So hopefully some of the information that I provide, can point you in that right direction for, kind of what you think is the best way that you want to go with that. But thank you, Kyle, for the chat. And hope you're off to a 3-0 start, looking for 4-0 tomorrow. All right, Rob Navarro, it's week 4 already. It is week 4 already. It's funny because once this starts with the season and the fantasy football, it seems like it's just all of a sudden it's going, and before you know it, so it's week 4 already. So in one way of looking at it, it is a 17-game season, 18 weeks. So there's still a lot of play left. So for those of you that are off to tough starts, which happens, you got a lot of time to turn it around. And for those of you that are off to great starts, keep on doing the homework, keep on checking your waiver wires, improving your team, because there are other teams out there who are going to be looking to run you down. So yes, it's week 4, but we got a lot of good stuff ahead of us. So certainly a lot to look forward to. All right. Thank you guys for the early chats. Let's get our first set of Saturday stars in here. Before we do that, let me do this. I'm going to put this banner up on the screen talking about our 6 picks game. For those of you that haven't gotten a chance to play our 6 picks game yet, that is available right now for week 4. The link is in the description area below. If you click on that link, you'll see our video, and basically what it is, I'll put the rules up. Actually, I have to stop the banner to put the rules up, so let me do that. This is our week 2 thumbnail. There you'll find the 6 picks video with a different thumbnail than this, obviously, for week 4. But the whole idea behind 6 picks is there are 6 fantasy matchups. All of them occur in the same game. So it's 2 players on either side of the same game. Pick the winners to all 6 of those matchups based on who you feel will have the better fantasy scoring day. Using PPR scoring, we keep the standings all season long, and those picks will close at 1 Eastern on Sunday. So tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern time before those games start. And our current leaderboard, as we have it right here, Chris Noriega in first place, followed up by Vansco and Bill Romanowski. So those are the players that we currently have on our season leaderboard. Again, that's the 6 picks video. It's in the description area below. That's where the link is. You have until 1 o'clock tomorrow. So if you want, after our live stream tonight, if you want to take a look at it, or, even if you want to click over and click back, it's fine with us. But get those picks in, get your name on that leaderboard, and play along. It's going pretty well. And if it's something you guys enjoy doing, then certainly we enjoy continuing to bring it to you. So that's our 6 picks game currently available. I'm going to leave that banner up. Actually, I can't leave the banner up while I'm going through the content because it does not match on the screen, but that's okay. Let's get right into Saturday Stars, top matchups, this weekend's plays. These are not start sits. This is not necessarily a start sit list, kind of similar, but not exactly the same. I don't have these ranked in any order. Basically what I'm looking at here are players who have the best matchups tomorrow. Now, I'm not going to include obvious starts that have great matchups, because clearly there are some of those out there. What I'm kind of doing here is I'm pointing out players who might be kind of on the fringe that you might consider playing over a different player, taking a look at which players might be in a good spot to have a nice day based on those good matchups that are available. So we start out at the quarterback spot, and the first person on our list here is Jalen Hurts. Now, obviously, Jalen Hurts has been playing pretty well this year. He's been 21 or more fantasy points all 3 of his games. He's actually currently the quarterback 4 in overall standings for fantasy points. So it's been a nice year for Hurts. We kind of thought that might be the case, even though there's been kind of a lot of talk real football wise about his struggles. He provides you such a nice floor because of his rush game. It makes him a very valuable fantasy quarterback. At any rate, playing Kansas City this week, the Chiefs currently allowing the 2nd most fantasy points to the quarterback spot. So this is a good spot for Jalen Hurts, despite the tough matchup for the Eagles. The Chiefs have given up 30 plus in 2 of 3 games, 30 or more fantasy points, and they gave up 34.20 to Lamar Jackson in week 2. So again, if the run game is anything similar to Hurts, obviously I don't feel that Hurts is necessarily at the level of Lamar Jackson in terms of his run game, but certainly if Hurts is able to add you some rush yards, that certainly helps out your fantasy day. So we look for Jalen Hurts, a top matchup for this weekend Saturday Star at the quarterback spot. Next player on the list is actually Taylor Heinecke in Washington. In a backup role there, has played pretty decent. Good matchup against Atlanta. Atlanta are currently allowing the fourth most fantasy points to the quarterback spot. They have given up 28 or more fantasy points in 2 of their 3 games to the opposing quarterback, and Heinecke has had 21 or more in his last 2 games, 4 touchdowns over that stretch. So again, Taylor Heinecke might be a name that's out there on the waiver wire if you need to take a pop at somebody in a streaming situation. It's most likely, I'm sure he's out there. This is a name that might have a chance. I know it's not the first name you think of, but certainly worth consideration in this spot, I think, based on that matchup. And now that we've had 3 weeks in, I kind of feel like early on, like when we have 1 game and whatnot, the data doesn't really tell us as much, but we're learning more. We're figuring out more as the year goes by. With 3 games in the books at this point, that data starts to tell us some things. So Heinecke, a player to look for as a possibility for you streaming-wise. Here's another one that might be out there for you, Baker Mayfield, a player that you might not look to very often. Has not had a great year overall this season fantasy-wise, but this is a nice matchup playing the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings currently allowing the 6th most fantasy points to the quarterback spot. They did give up just over 35 to Kyler Murray in week 2. Cleveland, of course, is a run-first offense, but this perhaps could be a situation where they are forced to throw the ball a little more should Minnesota be able to put up some points against them. So I like this as a top matchup for this weekend, Baker Mayfield at the quarterback spot. Next up, this guy is probably pretty obvious. I'm not really necessarily somebody that I would typically include on this list of Saturday stars because I don't really expect that most people are going to be considering benching Russell Wilson at many points, but it is a very nice matchup against the 49ers. San Francisco allowing the 7th most fantasy points to the quarterback spot. They have given up 21 or more in 2 of 3 games. Wilson, 23 plus himself in 2 of his 3 games. And last season against the 49ers, he did average 23.57 fantasy points. So a nice matchup in there in Seattle. Now, Tyler Lockett looks to be a little banged up, so that could affect things a little bit. But nonetheless, a good matchup there for Russell Wilson. Another guy that might be out there and available, Jacoby Brissett for the Miami Dolphins. I certainly feel, and I've heard some other people say this, that Jacoby Brissett might be the best quarterback on the Dolphins roster this year. I know I wasn't all that high on Tua. Of course, we don't ever want to see anybody get injured, but Jacoby Brissett is now getting an opportunity there. And this week it's a revenge game playing the Colts. Indianapolis currently giving up the 8th most fantasy points to the quarterback spot. They have allowed 23 or more in 2 of their 3 games. And Brissett last week against the Raiders, 20.30. And the Raiders have been playing pretty well. So Jacoby Brissett, a player that might be worthwhile of a stream this weekend. And then we talked a minute ago about Sam Darnold. Another nice matchup here for Darnold with the Panthers playing the Cowboys. Dallas currently allowing the 9th most fantasy points to the quarterback spot, and they have given up 22 or more in 2 of their 3 games. Darnold has had 19 plus in all 3 of his games. So I think this is a very decent possibility that Sam Darnold is someone that could be on your radar if you're looking to replace perhaps a Ryan Tannehill in your lineup this week with a bad situation with Tannehill losing his top 2 receivers. So that's your quarterback set of players. We'll jump back over to the chat here and see what's next. Looks like Kyle Ellis is here. Kyle Ellis is saying thanks, and I say no. Thank you, Kyle. Of course, as we always say, you guys in the chat are what makes the show, and absolutely we have a lot of content to give to you, but we would always rather be talking with you than just talking to you. So appreciate you being in the chat. Thank you guys for the questions. Again, I'll put up the regular reminder here, and there it is, that our live chat is open for the entire show, answering your fantasy football questions. Feel free to drop us a chat, even if we are talking about other content. We do that on all of our shows. We'll do the same thing on the Sunday pregame show tomorrow. But if you are in the chat tonight and you would like to ask your question, or if you just have any general fantasy football thoughts, let us know how you're doing. All that good stuff. And if you're watching on replay, feel free to do the same in the comments. We'd always love to hear from you down there. But that live chat will stay open for the remainder of the show. All right, Saturday Stars, top matchups for this weekend. We've gone through the quarterback spot. Now let's go on to the wide receivers. Again, this is not a start-sit list, but this is the players with a good opportunities based on their matchups this weekend. Similar to a start-sit list in that I don't really generally add players who are obvious starts, even when they have great matchups. But I'm not really ranking these in any order. I'm kind of putting them just in the order of basically who they're where their opposition is. So starting off the wide receiver spot for week 4, I've got Jacoby Myers here from the New England Patriots. Jacoby Myers has been the leading target getter in the Patriots offense in terms of wide receivers, 29 targets in the 3 games. That does lead the team. And this week, of course, you might have heard New England is playing Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay currently gives up the most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. They have allowed 5 receivers over 19 fantasy points this season already, and they gave up 38.90 to Amari Cooper in week 1. So there is some nice opportunity here on the New England side of the ball. Obviously, the quarterback play there has been a little bit of a question mark, but when you're seeing as much volume as Myers is right now in terms of the targets, there is some good opportunity there, and there is, I think, the potential that they are going to need to throw the ball here against Tampa Bay, because I have a feeling that Tom Brady just might want to keep the foot on the pedal in this game. It's very possible. I don't know if you'd agree with that. So that leaves some opportunity on the other side of the ball, and that could be Jacoby Myers in this matchup. Saturday Star, a top matchup for this weekend at the wide receiver spot. The next guy on our list, now again, this is a player that by no means belongs on this list in terms of when we talk about similar to a start sit. Nobody's sitting Calvin Ridley, but because of the slow start he's had, I decided to include him on this list in the fact that hopefully this is the week where Calvin Ridley and the Atlanta offense kind of turns it around, especially without Russell Gage. Not that they really didn't need to be without Russell Gage for Calvin Ridley to be involved in the offense like he should be there. But we haven't seen him really show the production that we expected so far. Again, it's only week 4, new offensive coordinator there. Could this be the week that Ridley turns it around? Certainly, if you have him on your roster, you hope so. If you're playing against him, of course, you hope that he doesn't. But at any rate, a good matchup here for Ridley against the Washington football team. Washington currently giving up the 2nd most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. They have allowed 5 opposing receivers over 18 fantasy points already this season. Ridley, 29 targets over 3 games this year. He does lead the team, as he should there. Perhaps we will see Ridley with a breakout game here in week 4. Next up on our list here, another revenge game here, and that's for Corey Davis for the New York Jets playing against the Tennessee Titans. Good matchup here against Tennessee. Tennessee allowing the 3rd most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. They have allowed 21 or more fantasy points to 4 opposing wide receivers already this season. And Corey Davis did have, he's been a little bit up and down, obviously. And again, the quarterback play is an issue there. Probably the offense overall with the Jets is an issue there. But he did have a nice week 1, 26-7 against Carolina. Struggled a little bit after that. But Corey Davis, you would expect to be the number 1 target in that offense. So tough to trust a player like this at this point until you start to see a little bit more consistent production. But perhaps this is one of those weeks where if you have him on your bench, you're keeping an eye, to see where he's at and looking for him to have a nice week here. Certainly it's the potential is there with this matchup. So Corey Davis, a Saturday Star for this weekend. This is going to be an interesting game, this Tennessee Jets game, I think. I don't know what's going to happen in that. You got to think it's a Derrick Henry game, of course. But we'll certainly see what happens there. Next guy up here, Odell Beckham Jr. back in the lineup last week, and this week they've got the Vikings. Again, a nice spot here. We talked about Baker Mayfield. Of course, a lot of times when it's a good spot for the quarterback, it's probably a good spot for the receiver as well. Beckham had 9 targets last week, going up against Minnesota, who are allowing the 4th most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. They've given up over 20 fantasy points to 3 opposing wide receivers already this season. With no Jarvis Landry still there, you expect Odell Beckham to be the main focal point of that offense if they do have to throw the ball. And again, the potential is here. I know Cleveland's run game, I like their run game a whole lot. And I think Cleveland is really a good team this year. And I think that bolsters that run game as well because you get a lot of game strip situations that dictate the run. This one, perhaps Minnesota's been playing pretty well. Kirk Cousins has been playing pretty well. Perhaps they put up some points and force Cleveland to go to the air a little bit more. And is the benefactor of that going to be Odell Beckham? Quite possibly. It is a good matchup there. So Saturday Star, Odell Beckham at the wide receiver spot. Next guy up here this is a guy that for me is constantly underrated in my opinion. I know it's certainly for me, I don't know if you feel the same way about him. For those of you that keep an eye on DJ Moore or perhaps have him rostered, a good matchup here for Moore for Carolina this week playing against Dallas. Cowboys currently allowing the 7th most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. They've allowed 3 opposing receivers to go over 22 fantasy points this season. Moore, 31 targets this season. Again, underrated. 15-plus fantasy points every game this year. It certainly seems like he has the connection with Sam Darnold there with a new quarterback this year. So DJ Moore, I think, is a guy that you feel pretty confident right now on an every week basis. And again, a very nice matchup for DJ Moore. So if you have him on your roster, I think there is really some good opportunity for you there to continue to see him have his nice play for the Carolina Panthers. Next up here, a couple of guys that are just kind of wavering. Devonta Smith for the Eagles. A good matchup against Kansas City. The Chiefs allowing the 8th most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. They've given up 19 or more fantasy points to 4 opposing wide receivers at this point. So a possibility here for Devonta Smith. Expectations for me are pretty high. I like this player a whole lot, and I think that I would like to see him kind of move along, perhaps a little faster than he already is. He's still just a rookie, so we're probably going to see some up and downs there. I think between him and Jamar Chase, it looks like Jamar Chase probably has a little bit of an edge right now on Smith, but I think the potential is certainly there. And again, Philadelphia, I like Jalen Hurts at that quarterback spot as well. So I like Devonta Smith's matchup this weekend. And this last guy I've got here at the wide receiver spot, this is kind of a when are we going to show up situation, Robert Woods. A good matchup here playing the Cardinals. Arizona allowing the 10th most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. What has happened to Robert Woods in this offense in LA? Obviously, Cooper Kupp seems to be the favorite target of Matthew Stafford at this point. Robert Woods, for where you drafted him, I think it's a very difficult situation at this point. He's kind of hard to start right now, and I don't blame you guys at all for feeling like you don't want him in your lineups at this point. Do I feel like he's going to turn around this week? I actually don't. I just feel like there's something there with the connection that's not perhaps what it was in the past. And Stafford, aside from Kupp, we've seen Van Jefferson, we've seen Deshaun Jackson, we've seen a lot of Tyler Higbee, in terms of the tight end spot. Does Robert Woods kind of break out and turn things around? I don't know. He's probably one of the players I have the most concerns about over anybody. For me personally, I have Robert Woods in several spots. I'm sure a lot of you guys do as well. So this is a player that concerns me. It's a good matchup. Let's hope that he's able to turn around. Obviously, it's not only a good matchup for him, but it's also a good matchup for those other guys that have been playing really well in that offense. So we will have to kind of see what happens with Robert Woods. I think if you have better options this week, I think you're starting them over him, despite the good matchup, just because it's hard to know what you're going to get out of him at this point. But if he does turn it around, perhaps that gives you more confidence, or perhaps that gives you an opportunity to ship him off your roster, which I think for me might be more the way I'm looking at this point based on, if it only happens, once or twice where, you don't kind of see him in the offense the way you expect to, then that's one thing. But when you see it a lot of times, like we already have with Woods, I think that kind of changes your outlook a little bit. So shaky at best fantasy-wise for Robert Woods. Not doubting the ability. I'm not doubting the ability of the Rams right now because they're obviously playing quite well. But we would just like to see Robert Woods with that production that we expected based on where he was drafted. So let's see what happens this weekend in that game against the Cardinals. All right, we got quarterbacks, we got wide receivers down, and we'll go back over to the chats. We see some chats here, and we will jump back to that. Let me see where I left off. Again, as I go through the chats, just if I miss you as I'm scrolling around, just let me know, hey, you missed me, and I'll go back and get you. I don't by any means ever mean to miss anybody, but it does happen, especially when we have more chats coming through. So just let me know. We will start off with one of our regulars here, Takashi6400. Welcome back to the stream. You say, what are your thoughts on Tyler Conklin? I think this is a guy that we have to watch at this point. There was a lot of potential in Irv Smith this year for the Vikings at the tight end spot, and now that he is no longer in the offense there, is Tyler Conklin going to replace that potential? We saw obviously a great game last week. Let me get the stats. I believe he had 20 fantasy points on a PPR basis. 28 targets, 7 catches, 70 yards with a touchdown. Now, the previous 2 games, he only had 4 targets in each of those games. And this is an offense that has a lot of mouths to feed aside from Conklin. So, when you've got a Jefferson, when you've got a Thielen, last week, perhaps did the situation without Dalvin Cook allow for this game out of Tyler Conklin? And does that change when Dalvin Cook is back and healthy? Hard to say. But I think this is a player you want to watch at this point. And if you are streaming tight ends, or if you feel like you are in the eternal tight end frustration zone that so many of us are, this is a player, if you have room on your bench that I think it's worth picking up at this point and making sure that if he does continue to play well, that you have him locked up kind of, because I think there is some potential here. Now, again, the first 2 weeks, only four targets, 8 fantasy points in the first game, 4 in the second, 20 in the third. If you see anything close in week 4 to what he did in week 3, then I think there's a lot of reason to think about bringing this guy in. Right now, he is tight end 10 overall. And again, of the players who are not the big players or who might have been drafted, I do think Dalton Schultz, who is currently tight end 5, is the player I like the most. I know that I went out and picked him up in a few spots off the waiver wire this week myself. I think that in that offense, there's some potential there for him to have consistent production. Dawson Knox at 6 is a little bit, I think there's a potential there, but I don't know if I expect it to be quite as consistent. And again, I think Conklin is another player that you might see a little bit ups and down, but that's just the tight end spot. If you see another, even if you don't see the huge game this week, if you see a target share that is closer to what it was in week 3 than it was in the first 2 weeks, then that kind of tells you that they want to continue to work him into the offense there. And I do think that bodes well for him in terms of getting him on your bench, perhaps as your second tight end, and just looking for a spot where if you need to bring him in, you have him there. I do like him, and I'd like to see what happens next. Certainly a game to watch this week. Takashi, I'm going to get your follow-ups here before I see the other people. So I'll get your follow-ups in next. You say Moore is underrated. I agree with that. Let me see if you have any other follow-ups. I think those are the only two. Hope that helps you out a little bit, Takashi, on Conklin. If you have that spot on your bench available, I think definitely worthy of a pickup to see what happens. Alex R is here. You say Jarrod Cook or Dalton Schultz. All right, let's take a look at the numbers on the left side of your screen. We will put up fantasy points to the tight end spot, and we'd like to do that to take a look at the matchups here to give you any help with these plays. So let's look at Jarrod Cook first for the Chargers. That is a Monday night game at home against the Raiders. Las Vegas currently 22nd on your list, so that is actually the 11th fewest fantasy points to the tight end spot. I like Jarrod Cook this year. I think it's a player to watch. I don't necessarily think that he's someone that you're automatically starting right away at this part of the season, but if you start to see continued production from him, he's certainly in there amongst the other players. Dalton Schultz, I think, let's take a look at the matchup for him. Dallas home against Carolina. Carolina on the left side of your screen, 28th. So the matchup a little bit worse for Schultz. 5th fewest fantasy points to the tight end spot. I do feel that, again, when we talk about these decisions on lineups, there are 4 factors I like to look at here: ability, volume, matchup, and game script. And I look at them in that order for this reason. When you talk about ability, clearly you're talking about the players as you go up in tiers. Like at the running back spot, no matter if Alvin Kamara has a great matchup and a guy like take anybody that you want to talk about, Chase Edmonds has a better matchup and Kamara has a bad one. You're not going to, obviously you guys don't need me to explain that. The volume situation here, does that make a difference between Cook and Schultz? I'm not sure it's a huge difference in this game. You would expect the Chargers to be throwing the ball. It's just in either one of these situations, it's just a matter of whether or not those targets go to the tight end or not. So I think matchup-wise, you like the matchup better for Cook here. I don't think there's a huge difference between these two players in terms of much of anything else at this point. Let's look at the numbers just to kind of compare what they've done so far in terms of their usage in the offense. Schultz, 3 games, targets 6, 2, and 7. Fantasy points 11, 4, and 26. And then let's go ahead and find Jarrod Cook. He's a little bit farther down the line. He's tight end 24 right now. Target-wise, 8, 5, and 3. Decent, but you're seeing a downward trend there at fantasy points 11, 6, and 5. I do think that this week I expect to see a big Keenan Allen game this week. I think that after Mike Williams has had a bunch of big games, Keenan Allen certainly has been very involved in the offense, but we haven't seen, not that he hasn't played well, we just haven't seen as big of a fantasy day. I kind of have a feeling it goes more that direction this week. I don't know how that impacts Cook. The matchup is there for Cook. I think this is kind of a toss-up between these two players. If it was me personally, and I'm just going to give you opinion, not based on stats as much, I think my opinion is I just kind of feel like I like Dalton Schultz a little bit better at this point. That doesn't mean that can't change. And again, as I always say, fantasy football is all about opinions. I don't by any means think that I'm the only one out there, and I always try to give some information to back up my thoughts here, hopefully helping you guys make the best decision for who you're like. If it was me, I kind of prefer Dalton Schultz at this point, but that doesn't mean that can't change. And again, it's a tough spot, a tough position to predict. But yeah, if it were me, I'm going to lean Dalton Schultz here and roll with him. But I think that I can't fault you for going with Cook because I think there is the potential for him to play well there as well. Hope that helps you out, Alex R. It looks like you might be a new viewer, so welcome to the stream. Glad to have all you guys here. I will mention for those of you that are new viewers, first what I want to mention is for those of you that have already subscribed to the channel, thank you so much. Thank you very much. We have hit the first milestone for a new channel, and that is 100 subscribers. We reached that on our last live stream. So all of you guys that have been with us before and are subscribed to the stream, we thank you so much. The subscribes help our channel out a ton, as do the likes. If you enjoy our content, feel free to drop us a like. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do that to get those notifications. And again, they do help out they help out the channel a ton. So absolutely want to thank everybody that's been a part of being one of our subscribers, and we look forward to seeing all of you guys that are new on future streams as well. So thank you, Alex R., for being with us. I see another question here from you. You say Zach Moss or Leonard Fournette. Zach Moss is a player that I have on my Saturday Stars coming up when I talk about the running backs here for this week. So I do have some of his stats already going up against Houston. Houston allowing the 10th most fantasy points to the running back spot. Let's get those stats up on the left side of your screen. They're again 10th most. Leonard Fournette for Tampa Bay. I feel the Tampa Bay backfield situation is pretty difficult to predict. Not that the Buffalo situation is a whole lot better, but let's take a look at the matchup to see if it helps against New England. Where does New England fall on the list? A little bit worse off, 23rd. So that is actually the 10th fewest fantasy points to the running back spot. What are they going to do with Ronald Jones? What are they going to do with Giovanni Bernard? Of these two players, for this particular week, I might look Zach Moss's way over Fournette. I like the fact that Zach Moss seems to be the guy that Buffalo turns to in goal line situations other than Josh Allen. I know that Devin Singletary is also there, but I don't know that it seems like Devin Singletary is the guy they want to hand the ball to when they're down inside the 10 as much. It seems like Moss is more that guy. I think he's had 3 touchdowns already this year. When I looked him up his stats earlier, I believe that's what I saw out of him, but I will double check that as I'm going through this. I think that in this week's game against Houston, I wouldn't be surprised, and I don't think this is news to anybody, that it seems like this might be a really good potential run game. Even though Buffalo doesn't seem to work the run game in as much, I think it's very possible that they're working a big lead against Houston this week. I don't think that's going to stun anybody. It's not, and again, I'm up here in Buffalo, so I'm Bills Mafia, but fantasy football is totally different, and it's not really me. That's not really me speaking on the Bills. That's just looking at the particular matchup here. Moss's involvement the last 2 weeks, week 2 against Miami, 15 fantasy points. Week 3 against Washington, 18 fantasy points. Has even had a couple of targets, but he had 2 touchdowns in week 2. He had 1 in week 3. So I think that in terms of which player do you like there more, which player do you feel more comfortable with getting the volume, I feel like it's Zach Moss I think Fournette has the potential, but it's just that backfield situation is so unpredictable to me, not because of their ability. Just you don't know what's going to happen. And I do think Tampa Bay, I'd be shocked if this is not a pass-heavy game from Tampa Bay this week. Now, perhaps Fournette gets some of that out of the backfield, but I think that probably for me, and if this is a Alex R, if this is a standard league, I think even more the reason that my answer to this would be Zach Moss. If it's a PPR league, then perhaps you might be able to think otherwise and might be making it a little bit closer to Fournette. But I do think that for me, again, hopefully some of that information helps you there. I probably lean towards Zach Moss a little bit as a fine start there. Alex, thank you for the chat. Glad to have you on the streams, and look forward to seeing you in future streams. Let's see who's up next here. We got, again, if I miss anybody as I'm scrolling around, just tell me, hey, Joe, you missed me, and I'll go back and get it because sometimes that does happen. Big Goo is here. Welcome, Big Goo, to the stream. You say, what's up, sir? And I say, what's up to you, sir? Between Robert Woods, Emmanuel Sanders, and Tim Patrick, who would you start at flex in a standard league? Instinct right now, the first thing that stands out to me here is actually going to be Tim Patrick because of the fact that the wide receiver core is down a few players in Denver, and Tim Patrick has already had decent production there. I had Tim Patrick on the waiver wire show this week on Tuesday. I do have his numbers here. He's had 5 targets. This last week, 5 targets, 5 catches, 98 yards against the Jets. That was in week 3. His targets so far this year have been in the first 3 games 4, 4, and 5. And even with a little bit lower target share that he's had, his production fantasy-wise, 14, 13, and 15 points. So I think that's a very reasonable thought that, of course, you think his volume is going to increase a little bit there with KJ Hamler going out to injury again this week. Tim Patrick is a guy that's had some decent production in the past. I think you can expect between Patrick and Sutton, those 2 guys to be getting the most of the work there. Not a super great matchup this week in terms of the opposing team. Baltimore, I'll put the stats up here. Baltimore along the 19th most fantasy points, so it's actually that's also the 14th fewest. So he's on that side of the matchup just a little bit. If you compare that to the other matchups here, Buffalo and Houston, let's see where Houston falls. A little bit lower down, 24, so that's the 9th fewest. And then Robert Woods, I talked about already a little bit here. For the Rams in that matchup against, where are they? Against Arizona. Arizona at 10th. So the matchup edge goes to Woods. The question here is, how do you feel about Robert Woods at this point? Now that feeling might differ from person to person. I'm concerned. I've been concerned. It's obviously a better matchup, but we haven't really seen the production yet. And, even with the little bit lower level of volume that Tim Patrick is seeing for Denver, you have seen some nice, consistent production there. You would expect that volume to increase. On the Sanders side, I'm not going to say that I dislike Sanders. I just think that, are we going to see weeks like we saw last week with regularity? I just don't think that we are for Sanders. I think that you're going to see some good weeks, but I still think, Stephon Diggs is not going to be the 3rd highest fantasy point total in the Bills wide receiver core every week. It's just not going to happen. Cole Beasley is seeing a ton of targets, a ton of volume. I think those guys are going to consistently be 1 and 2 on that team. Now, if that happens this week and they build a big lead against Houston, where does that leave Sanders? I mean, is he going to need to get some of that work in the early part of the game before they're just turning to the run? I think that certainly is a possibility game script wise. So I think the matchup, if you like the matchup edge the best here and you feel like you can still trust Woods or you're willing to give him another week, then Woods has the matchup edge here. And he's clearly, I shouldn't say clearly, based on where you drafted him, he was clearly the highest tier player out of these players that you mentioned. But his production has not backed that up so far. I think ability-wise, where he's at in terms of his team, in terms of I think he's still there, but we need to see it at this point, and we haven't yet. So it's tough to trust him. And this might be a situation where you're looking at what do you need in your matchup. If you are favored to win, are you looking for the player with the higher floor, or if you need a bigger game, are you looking for the player with higher upside? Woods probably, I would think, with the best matchup would have the most upside, but I don't think the floor is there right now based on what we've seen. And Tim Patrick having such consistent production, I think, to me, seems like a safer floor. But again, it's a player that you haven't played yet, so you might feel just as worried about him as Woods. So I think this is a little bit of a tricky one. It might come down to your personal preference, but hopefully some of that information helps. I think if it were me, I might be taking a chance on Tim Patrick at this point. Again, that's a player that might be a little more underrated or a little lesser known, but we've seen him have some nice production in the past. So I feel like there might be a reason to think about looking Tim Patrick's way if that's your choice. Big Goo, I hope some of that helps there. Obviously, I know a lot of times my answers are not necessarily a this guy, that guy type answer. And that's kind of the way I look at it because I don't really feel like that's necessarily the way to look at fantasy. Like I say, you guys know your rosters as well as anybody. I want you guys to feel like you're making the best decisions for what you feel is best for your team. And there are a lot of factors involved in these choices. So again, I do always like to give the opinion, but I will also try to give you some other information to see if it, hopefully it helps you out. I think Tim Patrick is very reasonable there, but I certainly can't fault you with going with either one of those other 2 guys because there are probably positives and negatives to both of them there. So Big Goo, I hope whichever guy that you do pick there, I hope some of that info helped. And as I always say, I hope that player crushes it for you tomorrow. All right, let me see if there are any follow-ups here. I'll get your follow-ups before I move on to the other people. Also, would you drop Kenneth Gainwell for Trey Sermon? I probably would at this point. I think that Gainwell was a guy that we saw early on, but I don't know that his production is going to be all that worthwhile. He's currently running back 43 on the list. And if you look at his involvement, when he started out the season, that first week, 9 rushes, he had that touchdown, but he's only had 6 the following week, and he only had 1 against Dallas. Did see a few targets in each game. I think the upside is there for Trey Sermon based on the fact that we really don't know what's going to happen in that San Francisco backfield. It looks like Eli Mitchell is not expected to play this week from what we've seen so far. He's at least listed as doubtful. So for this particular week, I think it's a possibility that Trey Sermon at least gets another shot to kind of stand out in that backfield. The San Francisco backfield is tough to predict. It has been in the past. It looks like it's going to continue to be this year. But I think there's more upside there for sure for Trey Sermon. Certainly with the opportunity, if he can actually take advantage to play well when he gets the chance, and for whatever is going on there where it seems like the coaching staff is unhappy with him, if he can somehow turn that around, I think there's more upside there the rest of the season than there possibly is for Gainwell, because I certainly don't think, again, we don't ever want to see anybody get injured, but I think barring an injury to Miles Sanders, I don't think we're going to see Gainwell being that main guy, whereas Trey Sermon, it certainly is possible that he could still pan out to be at least a 1A in a committee there with a good run first team. So I probably, would think that if Gainwell is the player that is the lowest on your roster in terms of who you want to drop and Trey Sermon is available, I think that's very reasonable to go ahead and make that move. Let's see with Takashi answers the same question, and Trey Sermon should be owned 100%. And let me see here. Big Goo, you say, agree with Takashi, helped me narrowly win last week, but looking long-term, Mitchell is lurking. I do agree with that. And then you say, Big Goo, you say, I appreciate it. And as always, I say, appreciate you guys for being here on the chat. Again, you guys make the show with the chat. So all you guys being here, I thank you guys equally as much for being on the stream. Hope that information helps you out there, Big Goo. All right, let me move back up. And again, if I miss anybody as I scroll around, just let me know. But I believe that Chip Douglas is next in line here. Chip, not sure if you are a new viewer or not. It looks like, I feel like your photo looks familiar. So you may have been here before. But either way, glad to have you here tonight. You're asking Corey Davis or Cole Beasley, PPR. Let's take a look at numbers for this one. Wide receivers, the Jets. Certainly I talked about Corey Davis already on my list of Saturday stars. See, as I move these papers all over the place where I've got my notes, sometimes I lose track of where I'm at. Corey Davis, again, a good matchup with Tennessee, the 3rd most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot there on the left side of your screen. Buffalo against Houston. Houston a little lower, 24th. So that's actually the 9th fewest fantasy points to the wide. I think I said, did I say running back? It meant, if I said running back, I meant wide receiver. If I said wide receiver, then I'm probably just losing my mind, but that's okay. As we look at the actual involvement in the offense, we know for Corey Davis, it's a little bit up and down, and it's going to be a little bit up and down based on the quarterback play there. Certainly the quarterback play is going to be, hopefully, should be more consistent in Buffalo. Davis's targets in the first 3 games, 7, 5, and 10. But fantasy points, 22 in the first, and then 1 and 4 in the next 2. So obviously it's going to be up and down. It is a good matchup. I like the matchup. However, do I like the matchup enough to like him over Cole Beasley? Where am I seeing Cole Beasley on my list? I cannot find him. Give me a second here. Let me get this correctly lined up. The volume, I think, has been there for Beasley on a week in and week out basis. Again, this is a situation where you would expect Buffalo may not need to throw the ball as much in the second half, so perhaps the volume isn't quite there as much, although they are definitely a pass-first team. Beasley's targets, week 1, 13, week 2, 4, week 3, 13. That's a ton of targets. Fantasy points, 14 in the first week, 8 in the second week, and 21 in the third. So even with only 4 targets, he still had 8 points, which is not in the double digits, but probably at least going to be somewhere where you're not getting crushed by it. I do think probably in this situation, of all factors combined, I think Cole Beasley, despite the fact that Davis has a better matchup, you might trust him a little bit more at this point than Davis. I just think that, yes, Davis is going to have some big games, but the quarterback play there is going to be so inconsistent. It's likely the Jets are going to have to throw the ball more against Tennessee. It's also likely that Tennessee runs the ball, and perhaps, time of possession-wise, there's not as much to be had there for the Jets. I think in this situation, I would probably feel like Cole Beasley is at least the safer floor. And again, it could possibly be that Corey Davis might have a little more upside if he did have a good game, based on the fact that the Bills might end up running the ball a lot if they are leading this game big. But again, I don't feel Corey Davis would have probably as safe of a floor, as you can tell in the fantasy points that he's put up so far this year, as Cole Beasley has. So if you're looking for a safer play, perhaps you feel like you're already projected to win and you feel more happy with the floor of Beasley, with the potential of a good game if he reaches, the upside, then I think Beasley is the guy there. If you're in a situation where you have to swing for the fences and you want to look Corey Davis's way because of that matchup, I can't fault you there. These are both 1:00 games, so unfortunately you kind of have to make that decision early on. But I think hopefully some of that information helps you there, Chip. I think Cole Beasley, probably if it were me, in my opinion, I probably would lean that way just a little bit more. All right, Chip, thank you for the chat. Glad to have you here, and good luck in that Week 4 matchup. I hope you guys go out there, whoever you pick, and crush it for you. Next up is Hector Gonzalez, one of our regulars. Welcome back, Hector. Glad to have you back on the stream. Do you drop Ronald Jones for Le'Veon Bell? Interesting. I know that Bell just got signed to the roster for Baltimore this year. This is like one of those that feels like it's like, what's the phrase? 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I feel like either way, you're looking at a situation where there are just a bunch of guys in the backfield. And how do you know who it's going to be? I mean, when you're talking about Bell and Tyson Williams and Latavius Murray, and then you're talking about Jones and Fournette and Giovanni Bernard, if Ronald Jones is the person that you feel is least valuable on your roster in terms of who you would cut if you wanted to open up a spot, I probably would do this if it were me. Just simply based on the fact that you kind of already know what you've got with Jones. It's a jumbled mess there in the backfield, and you don't know how to predict which guy you're going to play. So when are you ever going to feel comfortable if you have to play Ronald Jones, right? If you've got enough other running backs on your team that you're not worried about having to start Le'Veon Bell right away, and you can kind of see, then at least there is potential there for something good to happen. I don't know how much potential I feel there is there. When I say something good to happen, what I mean is Ronald Jones or is Le'Veon Bell suddenly going to be the guy that's leading that backfield and giving you the ability to turn out some nice games? What we know is Ronald Jones is difficult to trust because of so many other, running backs there. What we don't know is how this Le'Veon Bell thing shakes out. And certainly with his name, people are going to go out there and get him right away. So to me, you're kind of taking a little bit of a flyer here. I would think if you have enough depth at your running back spot, I do think it's kind of reasonable that you could make this move. Ronald Jones is probably going to get picked up off your waiver wire as soon as you drop him. You probably just have to live with that at this point. You're taking a shot at the upside, and you're kind of just considering that you have to give up on something that is not all that great already. Of course, things could change. You never know. Like I said, you never want anybody to be injured, but you never know what happens in backfields. And certainly Ronald Jones, if something were to happen there where all of a sudden he was getting the bulk of the volume, he's in a good spot. But Bell's going to be in the same spot. It's just a matter of what does he have? Does he have anything close to what he's had in past years, or is he just not really all that involved anymore? You don't really know that. So if you have to take a shot and get him now, then I think this is probably very reasonable. Although difficult, you don't want to have to make that cut on someone like a Ronald Jones because you probably draft him, mid-round reasonably in a reasonable area where you want to be able to keep him. But I can definitely see this in terms of something that you might feel like you have to do. So yeah, I probably would go ahead and do that, Hector, if you feel like that's the right move. Just being aware that it's the waiver wire and Le'Veon Bell, he might not work out at all, but if that happens, you cut him and you move on to somebody else, and you just keep working at trying to improve your roster. So hopefully that helps you out there, Hector, and hopefully whichever guys you go there with, hope they crush it for you. Takashi, I don't think I got this one yet from you. Drop Peyton Barber for Tyler Conklin. This one's tough because, Takashi, do you need a running back this week? Las Vegas doesn't play until Monday night, and it doesn't, to me, look like there's a whole lot of good news about Josh Jacobs. I think I did see a report that he had practiced some this week, but I don't know that it looks like they're a whole lot more confident in him. And it does seem like if Jacobs doesn't go, that Barber is going to be the guy there again. Got a nice game last week. So if you need a running back this week to win your matchup, and you don't necessarily, if Conklin is going to be like your backup tight end for this week, then you might hang on to Barber and see what information you have tomorrow. Now, I don't know how much information you're going to get tomorrow before you have to make this move, but at least you've got until, game time. Minnesota plays in that first game, I believe. They're 1 p.m. Eastern time against Cleveland. Hopefully you might know something more on Jacobs by then. You're probably not, so you're probably going to have to make that choice. You're making the play on Conklin more of a year-long thing, whereas Peyton Barber is probably just a 1-week thing at this point. So if you have enough other running backs there that you don't need a Peyton Barber this week, and that's your guy to drop, then certainly you're not going to keep a player that you only think you're going to have value for 1 week at this point. Obviously, anything can happen in the future, but you're taking a shot on Tyler Conklin for a year-long thing. So in that situation, then, I think it's very reasonable that Peyton Barber is droppable. Obviously, if we knew that Josh Jacobs was back for sure this week, then he's absolutely droppable because the value is just not there anymore for him. It's going to be Jacobs and it's going to be Drake in that passing down role. So, it's just a matter of we don't know that yet, but if you're looking just purely in terms of a year-long, you want to take a shot on this guy that could turn out to be, another one of those tight ends that you pick up off the waiver wire that you just didn't expect and they have a great year, then, it makes a whole lot of sense here that you drop Barber. The only reason to keep him, like I said, would be if you absolutely think you need a running back this week, and he would certainly be the guy that would have the potential to have a good game if he was in that lineup. Hopefully that helps you out there, Takashi. But I don't think you're wrong to make that drop there. Just keep an eye on your reports. All right, next up in line, let's see here. Not Tom is back on the stream. Welcome to the stream, Not Tom. You say Sermon or Will Fuller in your flex this week. Let me take a look at the numbers for Miami this week, playing the Colts at home, 1 p.m. Indianapolis, giving up the 5th most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. What did Will Fuller put up last week? Did he put up much of anything? Let me see what we got over here. I did not see the game. I saw some highlights looking like he was at least somewhat involved. Certainly Will Fuller is a guy that there have been plenty of injury problems in the past, so you never know what's going to happen there. His stats last week, 6 targets, 3 catches, 20 yards, 7 fantasy points. To me, it's Trey Sermon here for this week, especially with the fact that you don't expect Eli Mitchell to play. I think you feel more comfortable with the volume that you would expect Sermon to get. I know that San Francisco doesn't seem to want to play him all that much right now, but I don't think they're going to have much of a choice this week, so I think you just have to kind of take advantage of that. If you look at the matchup against Seattle in terms of numbers, Seattle allowing the most fantasy points to the running back spot, which is, of course, why I have Trey Sermon as one of my Saturday stars. We haven't done the running back players that I have listed here yet. So, I think it's Trey Sermon based on the matchup, based on the fact that you feel that his volume is more predictable in this particular week. Down the road later in the season, it could be Will Fuller. If you ask this question in week 8 or something like that, it could be Will Fuller by that time, based on him working his way back into that offense. And Trey Sermon, who knows what he's going to be by that point in the year. But for this particular week with Mitchell still out, I think Sermon is probably the very reasonable thought there in that situation. Hope that helps you out there, Not Tom. Hope whichever guy you go with there, I hope that they crush it for you. All right, let me see who's up next here. Looks like Slide is next up on the screen. Slide says, Aguilar or Ronald Jones, number 2 at my flex. I could also YOLO it with Le'Veon Bell. I don't think he's ready for that. No, I don't think you want to do that. 16-team league, half-point PPR. Let's take a look at some matchups here and see if that will help you out. I like the matchup here for the New England wide receivers this week against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay currently allowing the most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. So I like that matchup. Obviously, both of these players in the same game. On the other side of it, New England against the run game, 23rd. So that's the 10th fewest fantasy points to the running back spot. Aguilar is certainly not, I don't think, going to be the number one guy in terms of targets for that team. It doesn't mean that he doesn't have some nice games, but Jacoby Myers is leading that group of players for the wide receivers. I'm looking for Aguilar's numbers to see what his production has been like. You say it's half-point PPR. Aguilar, 7 targets, 3 targets, 8 targets. In terms of points, 18, 5, and 4. So, yeah, not great. But let me look at Jones, and do we feel like Jones is going to be more predictably a part of that offense than Aguilar is? I don't know, just off the top of my head that I feel that. I'm going to look up his numbers, if I can find them. Sometimes it's not as easy to find these guys as you would think scrolling through. Like if I wasn't in the middle of doing a live stream and I was trying to find these guys, I'd probably be like, oh, there he is. But the fact that I am means that, of course, whenever I'm scrolling around looking for people, I can't find him there. Oh, he's way down the list. 75 on the running back list. That's not good. Wow. 4 rushes, 6 rushes, 5 rushes in that order. Only a couple of targets. He put up a stellar -1 fantasy points in week 1, 5 in week 2, and 1 in week 3. I think based on all of that, I would comfortably say Nelson Aguilar between these two players, despite who Ronald Jones is. Again, I think Tampa is going to be throwing the ball. I just can't imagine that Tom Brady is not going to try to throw 1,800 yards passing this game if he can do it against his former team. So I don't necessarily think that the run game is going to be a big factor. Even if they are leading, I just have a feeling that it's just going to be Brady back to throw, Brady back to throw. It's just the whole game. I can't imagine it's going to be anything else. So, yeah, I think Aguilar, I think New England is probably going to have to try to keep up and going to have to throw the ball more. And obviously, based on what you've seen from Jones in those first couple of games, no matter what Tampa Bay says about him, just, we need to see it. So I probably think Aguilar here. I don't think Le'Veon Bell yet, but I think you hold on to Le'Veon Bell if you have him and see what happens, especially in a 16-team league. If you pick up a player like that and they turn into something good, gets you an edge on the rest of your league there. So hold on to Bell, but I think Aguilar is what I would think is a fine start of these players here. And again, Slide, as I always say, whichever guys you go there, hope they crush it for you. All right, I got a bunch more chats before we get back to the content. I do want to put this banner back up for you guys that are all watching on the stream right now about our 6 picks game. The link is in the description area below. You'll see the video. It's 6 matchups. You're going to pick the winners to each one of them. It's just something for you guys to play along with. Get on that leaderboard, pick those 6 matchups. There's no cost or anything like that. Just click on the video. Make your picks in the comments section on that video. That's where they have to be so that we can keep track of them. I see a couple people on our chat already that are a part of that. So when we get to them, we will kind of highlight them as well as we go through. But I do want to put that banner up for now so that those of you who are checking out the stream or perhaps here for the first time, if you want to get in on this game, those picks are open until 1 o'clock tomorrow. So you can make those picks tonight. You can make them in the morning when you're starting your lineups, or if you're starting your lineups now, whatever the case may be, that is available for you. Current leader is Chris Noriega. All right, let's take a look at the next chat here. Kicks for Mike is here. What's up, Kicks for Mike? You say, are we going with Dak or Lamar this week? You have both Dak and Lamar, Kicks for Mike? How do you make that choice every week? You got to trade one of those guys and get some value out of one of them. Stick with one for the whole year. I think either one of these two guys you could play every single game. I don't know there's going to be a huge difference between one or the other if you're picking one or the other on any given week. You got to look for a trade there and see if you can bolster your lineup somewhere else. That's what I would think on this one. Let me see. Unless you're in like an 8-team league or a smaller team league where you have a ton of value at all of the positions already. But in terms of matchups, let's see what we got here. Let's take a look. Dallas. Let's take a look for the matchup in that game. Home against Carolina, 1 o'clock. Carolina, I don't want the running back. I want the quarterback spot. Fantasy points to quarterback on your left side of the screen. Dallas currently giving up the 9th most, so right in the green. And then on Baltimore side, up against Denver. They're on the road, 4:25 East Coast time on Sunday. That's tomorrow. In case those of you don't know, I should probably figure out what day it is so that I know that's tomorrow. Baltimore going up against Denver. The fantasy points, Denver is currently on the left side of your screen. Last. Wow. Who would have thought? Denver hasn't played a lot of good teams yet, though, have they, right? I mean, that might be more a factor of who they played than perhaps what they're doing on defense. At any rate, it is, the data is what it is. They're giving up the fewest fantasy points in the league right now. Dallas, you got to like always to be throwing the ball. Lamar, you got to like always to be running the ball. This is between, I don't know how you decide between these two guys every week. I mean, you must literally go up to game time and be like, click, no. Like, that's what I think I would be doing at this point. I would never want to have to sit Lamar Jackson if I have him. I just feel like the rushing that he gives you such a nice floor. Let me see what his numbers look like this year so that I'm not, completely saying something that's completely wrong. But I just feel like the quarterbacks that give you that run in addition to their passing, it's, it protects you from having bad passing days. Like Jalen Hurts hasn't had great passing days, and he's still giving you nice production fantasy-wise. Lamar Jackson, let's see. Passing-wise, 230, 230, 280. But rushing-wise, 86, 107, 58. Fantasy points, 18, 34, 20. He is QB 5 right now. Dak Prescott is QB 15. Dallas hasn't had to throw the ball quite as much this year. Fantasy points wise for Dak, 28, 8, and 20. He has the matchup edge this week. I don't know. Like, this is, where did I say Carolina? Oh, no, Carolina. Who did I say Carolina was playing? I said the wrong team, didn't they? That they were playing. Who did I say? I don't know. Carolina, Dallas. Carolina is fourth fewest. I have no idea what I just said. I'll have to watch my own replay back to see what I just said. Oh, I looked at Dallas. I think I said 9. Whatever. You guys, when I watch back my replays, sometimes I'm like, oh, why did I say that? Sometimes I try to go through all this information and things get a little bit out of whack. At any rate, most of you are probably watching and you're like, Joe, that's not right. You probably clearly know exactly what's going on because you guys are all smart and you're doing your homework. So I try to get it right most of the time. Anyways, yeah, Carolina 29th, fourth fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks. Denver 32, last. Of the two teams, which team do I probably feel like the defense is, the numbers more reflect what the defense actually is? Probably Carolina over Denver. That's just my guess. I can't say I've seen a whole lot of Denver games this year. I probably go with Lamar in this situation. I don't know, man. That's like, it's just gotta be a constant coin flip for you. I probably lean Lamar in this situation because I want a quarterback that runs the ball because it's just provide you such a safe floor. Even if he has a bad game, and if he has a great game throwing the ball as well, then great. I don't think there's any injury concerns on either team to be aware of right now. I probably lean Lamar, but man, that's tough. Let me see if there are any follow-ups from you here before I move on. Let's see. You see a follow-up here. It says an 8-man league. That makes sense. Nobody likes Lamar, so I got him in the 11th round. You got Lamar Jackson in the 11th round? That's ridiculous. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I would have taken him too. I was surprised when we were doing mock drafts this year. I didn't really even think that – I know Kyler Murray has got off to a great start, but I didn't even really think Kyler Murray was justified to go ahead of Lamar Jackson in drafts. I know Kyler Murray is going to be a similar player with that rushing floor, and perhaps a lot of people like the fact that you probably like his passing potential better than Lamar. Lamar was an MVP a couple of years ago. I mean – I would have taken that same value. I can't believe, but I understand what you're saying because we saw that a lot. I didn't end up with Lamar Jackson in any of my leagues personally this year, but doing mock drafts, saw that a lot where Lamar Jackson would be slipping, and I kind of thought there would be situations in actual drafts where I would have gotten him. It just didn't work out that way. Hope that helps you out, Kicks or Mike. Go with whatever you feel best about there. I think because I think that they probably are really close. Take a look at your matchups. If there's somebody on the team that you're playing that, perhaps, they have a CeeDee Lamb or an Amari Cooper, then that gives you reason to play Dak because it protects you against a big game from one of them impacting you because then you're going to get a piece of those points. If that's not the situation, then you have total options in terms of who you go with there. Baltimore is a late game and Dallas is an early game. So you got to make that choice early. Me personally, again, I'd probably pick Lamar out of those two, but that might just be me personally. It might not be the same for you. So I think either way you go, I think you're going to be fine there. I think both of those guys on a weekly basis, I don't expect them to have that many bad games. But if you're looking for who I like better, I probably like Lamar personally. But I hope whichever guy there you pick there kicks for Mike, I hope that they crush it for you. And you say, thanks for the help, bro. And I say, nope, thanks for being on the stream. And you say he does have CeeDee Lamb. And so that is the reason why I mentioned those things. It was, typically we might not think about those things until we get closer to the end of the year when it's like a must-win situation to make the playoffs. But a win in week 4 counts just as much as a win in week 14 does when you're looking for playoffs in week 15. So it's worthwhile to keep an eye on those little things. So yeah, if you are favored to win and your opponent has a receiver that corresponds to your quarterback, it's kind of like you having a stack on your team. And that way, if one has a good game, then perhaps they both have a good game. So therefore, if you are projected to win, you are protected against CD having a huge game, meaning that Dak also has a huge game. And then there he is sitting on your bench while your opponent is crushing you. So yes, in this situation, especially if it's a close choice, I do think that might make your choice for you. So take that into consideration when you decide which guy. And obviously you're hearing what I'm saying here, and I'm not straight out saying take Dak because of that, but I am saying that that's got to be a big consideration for you. So take that into consideration to help you make that decision. Good luck for you. Kicks for Mike. Go out and get that W. All right, let me scroll back up. Again, if I miss anybody as I scroll around here, just let me know that I missed you. I'm not meaning to do that, but I think next up in line here is Chip Douglas, and you say, how about Dawson Knox or Cameron Brate? For this week, this situation, let's look at the matchups. My instinct says Brate, but let's look at it. New England fantasy points to the tight end spot on the left side of your screen, second fewest. So good instincts there, Joe. Dawson Knox against Houston, fourth most to the tight end spot. So way to go. See, this is why I make these graphics, because as much as I look around and see different things, when I first look at something without actually putting up information to back up what I'm saying, that's what kind of like why I always say about fantasy football is all about opinions. Opinions are great, but like my instant reaction when I saw these two players was Cameron Brate. If you like the matchups don't say that. And the data, again, we've had 3 games. It's not the most games, but it is enough of an amount of data that there's something to it. So would I play Dawson Knox in this situation? I would probably consider it. There are so many mouths to feed actually in both of these teams, there really are mouths to feed. In Tampa, there's a lot of mouths to feed. With Rob Gronkowski out, does that necessarily mean that Cameron Brate is going to automatically get the same level of involvement in the pass game that Gronkowski would have gotten? I don't think that it does. Of course, there is potential for that to happen, but I don't think that it means it's an automatic. It's not like a running back getting hurt and then your next guy up is automatically going to get that close to that same level. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, whoever else you want to name on that team that is a part of that situation, it means that Cameron Brate could simply have a 2-target night. He's not Gronk, and Tom Brady has a lot of years with Rob Gronkowski that play into his involvement with him. Dawson Knox, I think, is on the way up for the Bills. I've kind of felt that way for a while, but I didn't necessarily think that fantasy-wise it made him relevant yet until we saw a little bit more. We're starting to see a little bit more this year. Target-wise, not a huge amount, 4.35. And again, you're not talking about a team. You're talking about a team that does throw the ball quite a bit. So that, regardless of what we're seeing for targets, there is potential there. The matchup numbers are good against Houston. Potentially, are they in a situation where game script means they're running the ball a lot? Probably, but also potentially, does it mean that they're in the red zone quite often? Probably. And so that being said, if your tight end Dawson Knox sees red zone involvement, which Knox has had a touchdown each of the last 2 weeks, and in week 2 he only had 17 receiving yards, and in week 3 he had 49, without actually looking at the tape to tell you if those were red zone looks, I'm going to assume they were. There's a good chance they're in the red zone quite a bit against Houston. And there's a good chance for that. my instinct here, my initial instinct was Cameron Brate. And after going through and saying all those things, and perhaps what you're hearing me say is saying the same thing, I think that Dawson Knox is probably what I would look to here in terms of these two players for those reasons. And also, I think that especially if this is a situation where you are picking up one of these players, do you already have them both, or is one of these players going to be a waiver wire pickup for you, and you have to cut somebody? If you do, and you have to invest a cut in losing somebody else off your roster to get them, then Dawson Knox, I think, returns you more value for the rest of the season, certainly than Cameron Brate does, which makes him more worthwhile to stay on your roster long term. And that would be another reason, if you are cutting somebody to get one of these two guys, to go with Knox this week, and that being because Knox would give you more potential value down the road than Brate will. Once Gronkowski is back, you certainly won't even be asking this question anymore, and you still might be asking the question, should I play Dawson Knox over whoever? Name another guy. So I think I would say Dawson Knox in this case. Hope that helps you out, Chip. And let me see if there are any follow-ups here from me before I move on. I do not see any, so I will say thank you for being on the stream. And go out there and get that W. Looks like one of our regulars here is Vansco. Vansco's with us. Vansco, before I get to your chat, let me go ahead and do this. This gives me a nice opportunity to pop the leaderboard for the 6 picks game. In order to do that, let me get this scroll off the screen, and we'll move back over here because Vansco is currently in second place. Nice work so far, Vansco, in the 6 picks game. But that just means the rest of you guys on the stream right now got to get over there and make your picks and challenge him to make your way up that leaderboard. I know that Bill Romanowski has already predicted that he's going 6 for 6 this week in the 6 picks game. So it's up to you guys to go out there and try to equal that and move past him and get up there on that leaderboard yourselves. So go over and check out that 6 picks game and see if you can challenge these top guys. Vansco back with us. Let me go ahead and get to your chat. You say Allen Robinson or Marquis Brown. You have the Lamar stack. Leaning giving AR one last chance before he rides the bench. I don't blame you at all for thinking about putting him on the bench. I think this is a situation where, similar to Robert Woods, if you have a worthy option, I think it's consideration to not play him this week. This is a better matchup. Let me go ahead and put the matchup numbers up here. Let's see, wide receivers. Nice. The graphic works this time. I like it. On the wide receiver side, Allen Robinson for the Bears. Let me see what time that game is. That helps us out at all. Bears play at 1 o'clock. Detroit is a better matchup, clearly. Where do they fall on the list? 21st, not quite as high. That's probably because teams are, game script-wise, running the ball against them. Marquise Brown for Baltimore against Denver. Where does Denver fall? 23rd. So the matchup is actually a little bit in favor of Robinson. I probably think the way you're leaning makes a lot of sense here, although I'm not confident at all. The Bears are starting Justin Fields. The Bears are now going to, start Justin Fields. Andy Dalton is, I think they announced him as doubtful. I don't know if they announced him for sure starting or not. Let me see if it's over here on the list yet of other stuff. I don't see it listed. But I do think I'm pretty sure that was the report that I saw. Yes, it was bad for the Bears last week. Is it going to be just as bad this week? I don't know, but do you have a lot of confidence that it's going to be a whole lot better? Probably not. But that being said, Robinson is your main guy at Baltimore in terms of their game is always going to look towards the run. So it's always going to make Marquise Brown a little bit more volatile in terms of what type of work he gets and the amount of potential he has to have a really good day for you. If we look up Marquise Brown's numbers, he's currently wide receiver 14, and Allen Robinson is currently scrolling. Holy cow, am I missing? 66th. Wow. That's awful. That's really bad. My goodness. 11 targets week 1, 4 targets week 2, 6 targets week 3. Fantasy points 10, 10, and 5. That's brutal. I have Allen Robinson in a couple of rosters myself. I actually think I have Allen Robinson and Robert Woods on a roster. That's really bad. Marquise Brown's targets, 6 10 and 7. Fantasy points 19, 23, and 8. There's not a huge difference in the matchups. Marquis Brown is actually seeing a little bit more volume than Robinson. You feel like you're more confident in knowing what you're going to get from the Baltimore offense than you are from the Chicago offense right now. If this is your last shot for Allen Robinson, I would give you that. I do think that I might be hard-pressed to not make that switch. I just think that I don't feel that their confidence is there in Robinson if you have a viable option. And it does seem, based on the volume that's there and the production that he's been giving you, that Marquis Brown is a viable option. Plus, you have the stack. So yeah, I think you're going to be in. I think you're going to be in one of those game time decisions for you there. If you're leaning Allen Robinson right now, I totally understand that. And this is the thing about doing these live streams and doing this research is it's so much different when I'm talking about situations that are not my own. Because if this was me making that decision for my own team, I would probably be like, but I can't sit Allen Robinson. I drafted him high. He's the main guy. And I would probably start Allen Robinson. And then later on that day, when they started playing and I looked at the stats, I would be like, why didn't I start Marquis Brown? That's probably what I would do. It's like when I talk about these things, the investment is not the same. So it's easier for me to look the other way. That's why a lot of times I say I don't fault you guys for making the other decision, because there's a lot of other factors there. There's a lot invested in. It's your own team. And like I always say, you guys know your rosters. So if it's me sitting here talking about this choice, I probably say I think it's very reasonable based on the stats so far and what you think about the offense right now that you might pick Marquis Brown. Based on your actual investment and who you drafted and all of that stuff, I understand why you're leaning towards Robinson. So I think, Vansco, you are probably in a game time situation here for you. If it were, like I said, I already said it. If it were my team, I'd probably still end up going with Robinson, and then I'd probably end up being mad at myself most likely after that. So whichever way you go there, I hope you the best. Marquis Brown certainly has potential, boomer bust all the time. And you used to think Allen Robinson has a safer floor, but we're just not seeing it this year. So let me go ahead and get your follow-ups here. Before I do that, Not Tom drops a thanks, and I say again, no, thank you for being here. I see a couple other here that I'm gonna go past to get these follow-ups, and then I'll go back to the other ones. Vansco, pick 2, Naim Heinz, Michael Pittman, Juju, Antonio Brown, Brandon Ayuk. Looking for a WR2 and a flex, starting Patterson, Gaskin, and Hopkins. I feel that, let me put up the stats because a couple names stand out to me. Let me put the running back stats first. Indianapolis tomorrow. That game is at 1 o'clock against Miami. Miami currently the second most fantasy points to the running back spot. I know that he is expected to play Jonathan Taylor, but the fact that he is banged up and hasn't been having all that great a production, and while we've seen Naim Heinz playing quite well, first off, it makes me wonder if Jonathan Taylor has been a little bit hurt already this year, and they've been kind of making sure that he didn't get worse hurt, and that's why we've seen such a slow start from him. I think he's a player to be concerned about right now, and we've seen production from Heinz. And so all that being said, does that mean that Heinz might be a very possible starter this week? I think that it does. Pittman is not a player that I have a great feeling about ever. I don't really have too much of a gut on that. Miami, in terms of fantasy points to wide receivers, as you see there, right in the middle, 17. In the Pittsburgh game for Juju, now no Chase Claypool in this game, so I think that benefits Juju. And Deontay Johnson is Deontay Johnson could play one play on any given week and then all of a sudden be limping off the field and then limping back onto the field at the start of the second quarter and then limping off. I mean, you know the deal. So what does that mean for Juju? There's probably a good chance he's going to see increased volume in this game. Playing at Green Bay. Green Bay is number 25 on the left side of your list, so 8th fewest. Antonio Brown against New England. Matchup is a little lower. The volume probably not as good. I skipped over the matchup, did I, for Indianapolis, Miami? Miami 17. No, I said that already. I need to look up Pittman's numbers because it's not, again, he's not a player that I have. I don't have him on any rosters, and I'm just not as connected to what he's doing to feel comfortable with him. Target-wise, wow, 4 targets the first week, 12 the second week, 12 the third week. 6 fantasy points in week 1, 20 in week 2, 13 in week 3. Okay. That makes you look. Brandon Ayuk, I have a weird feeling about Brandon Ayuk at this point, but I can't give you information based on weird feelings. That's not going to help you. Just for me, for some reason, I think that Brandon Ayuk is on his way to working his way back into that offense. No, obviously the first week we had that 0, and then second week 2 targets, last week 6 targets with a touchdown, 15 fantasy points. I like Ayuk moving forward. They're playing Seattle this week. The matchup number 15, so right in the middle. Not great. I don't know if we've seen enough yet to trust him compared to the other guys that we've already talked about there. That being said, who do you trust the most for the volume, Vansco? I think based on everything that I've just looked up here, it's Pittman and Juju. I'm going to assume it's a PPR league. I don't know if you've said that anywhere. Let me just look and see what it says. You did say PPR. So I think that being said, I certainly think that Heinz is going to be fine for you in a PPR league, but it's a little bit more of a guess because if Taylor's doing okay and they're beating up on Miami, then you expect Taylor to be that guy there. And Heinz is going to be one of those guys where it's, some weeks good, some weeks not, based on game script. What I'm trying to do here is look up Juju's numbers to see what he had for targets last week. Since Roethlisberger throws the ball 188 times per game, I'm sure he had some targets. Wow, Juju only had 4 targets last week. I'm constantly looking up numbers tonight and being surprised by what I see. His fantasy points, 9, 16, and 6. Juju left the game injured last week, didn't he? Guys, right? Juju left that game injured. Yeah, let me see. It doesn't say ribs. Doesn't say when he got hurt. So, yeah. He's been removed from the injury report, so you have to feel good about that. With no Claypool, I probably look at Pittman and Juju here. I feel like those two are the two that you trust the level of volume the most. I can absolutely see an argument for Heinz. I think that Antonio Brown is difficult to predict because I think that it's going to go one way or the other for him. I don't see him as an every week guy at this point in that offense. I think there are more guys that are ahead of him in the pecking order there. And Brandon Ayuk, I think, is working his way back in, but I think you'd rather see it first. The last guy I'm looking up here is Naim Heinz to see his numbers so far throughout the year. And his numbers are this. Rushes 916 in that order. Targets 826 in that order. Fantasy points 14, 3, 19 in that order. So, yeah, again, it's going to be an up and down deal with Heinz because he's going to be so closely related to the game script. Playing against Miami, a team that you expect them to be beating, you wouldn't expect him to see the amount of pass work potentially as he might in some games, which is why my gut Vansco here says Pittman. And I don't think you really want to start Pittman and Heinz. And based on the volume that he's seen the last couple of weeks, I think it's got to be Pittman here as the first guy you pick. So he's probably the WR2, and I probably start Juju as your flex, given all that information. Again, you guys know your rosters. Vansco, you know your rosters. You know your rosters as well as anybody. So make the choice that you like the most, but hopefully that information did help you some. And I think to me, like I said, for me, probably Pittman and Juju. I've seen a couple of follow-ups there from you, Vansco, but I'm going to skip back to the couple that I skipped over first before I get to your next ones. With the exception of, I see that you're feeling good about your 6 picks this week. So good luck to you on those. We'll see what happens. Hopefully you could hold off all of your new challengers who right now are flocking over to the 6 picks video to get in the game. Again, it's only week 4. But get in there and start making your way up that leaderboard. It's a year-long thing. We keep those standings all year long. So Vansco currently in second place. That doesn't mean you guys can't move past them with a little bit of solid work over there. I will get your next questions, Vansco, after I go back and get the couple that I skipped over here. Let me see. Hector Gonzalez, I believe I skipped over this one. Stash, Josh Gordon or Bateman? What a yuck situation this is. I think to me, like, I don't know what you really expect from Josh Gordon at this point. I feel like we've seen opportunities for him before, and it kind of, I don't want to say it kind of goes in one direction, but I feel like it does. I think Rashad Bateman is probably, of these two, the guy that you stash. I'm looking to see when he's expected to be back. I don't know if they have any notes on that. They have him listed. Well, they have him listed for projected points on Yahoo this week, but they also still have him listed on IR. So has he returned? It says he won't play in week 4. I don't know if it says when they expect him to play. 2-week window to be activated. Okay. Bateman returned to practice before week 4, but by remaining on the IR, only has a 2-week window to be activated and play this year. So that means he needs to be activated within the next couple of weeks, or else he doesn't play at all. I probably think that, I mean, we don't know what we're going to get from him, but Baltimore needs pass catchers. I don't know what's going to end up happening with Gordon here. In that, I mean, let's see what the notes say. Andy Reid probably not going to be this week. When asked when Josh Gordon would play, Reid added it's going to take a while. Their advice is because of that, he can remain off of all but the deepest of rosters. Yeah, I probably think of these two, I probably would feel like you go ahead and take a shot at, there's less, there are fewer players. If Bateman is able to get back into that offense, there would be fewer players ahead of him in terms of players who are getting volume there. So I probably think he's the guy that you take. Either one of them is a flyer, really, that you just hope kind of turns into something. I'd probably go with Bateman here. But I don't know that either one of them is going to be anybody you're thinking about starting for quite a while. So you're putting that in the right terms by saying stash. Let me see if there are any follow-ups from you, Hector. I don't see it. Yeah, I think for me it's probably Bateman there. But you're gonna see players in all sorts of leagues picking up Josh Gordon just the same way as they're picking up Le'Veon Bell and hoping for something to work out well. We'll just have to see how it goes. Hope that helps you out there, Hector. And hope that you get some guys to crush it for you this week. Next up in the line is Rolando Fortunel. I always try to get these names right. So let me know if I got the name right there in the chat. I try my best. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But Rolando Fortunel is what I'm going to go with the last name. Looks like you might be a new viewer. If so, welcome to the stream. If you've been here before, welcome back. Let's take a look at some numbers here for your Mike Evans or Brandon Cooks question. All right. Let's take a look at Tampa first against New England. 28th in terms of fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. That is the 5th fewest. Houston against Buffalo. Buffalo, 30th, 3rd fewest. Brandon Cooks has gotten a huge amount of volume. He's probably going to continue to get that amount of volume. So in terms of the amount of possibilities or amount of opportunity that they're getting, I think Brandon Cooks is a safer amount of opportunity on a week in and week out basis. That being said, neither one of these matchups are very good. And in the Tampa matchup, you've got no Gronkowski this week. I do think that means good things for Mike Evans. And as I said earlier on the stream, I just have a feeling that Tom Brady is going to I've felt this year that this year is a lot about Brady. The start that he's had that's been so good. There's been a little bit of talk this week about the fact that he could break the record this game for passing yards. Career passing yards, I think, is the record Drew Brees has, right? And Brady has the opportunity to break it. Were the Bucs to have turned to the run game more in the first few weeks, it would have been possible that Brady might not have had enough yards to reach that and break it in New England. So this might be the Buffalo Bills fan in me that's a little bit jaded about losing to New England and Tom Brady for so many years. But I just have a feeling that their first few weeks of the year for the Bucs was kind of purposely to get Tom Brady to be able to break that record in New England. Like, I just feel like that's something that would happen for whatever reason. Now, those of you that are Brady fans or New England fans or whatever, you're probably not gonna like that statement, but that's just what it looks like to me from the outside. Like, let's make sure that Tom Brady gets this record in New England when he goes back there. So that being said, I think that this game against New England is going to be all Tom Brady all day. Very little run game, regardless of game script. And without Gronkowski, that means Mike Evans. We've seen Mike Evans be a favorite target in the red zone for Brady, with not even taking into account his overall workload there. I probably like Evans, and I also think that Evans is slightly the higher tier of player than Cooks. Despite Cooks is currently the wide receiver 6 on the year. So he's certainly up there when you look at his targets. 7 the first week, 14 the second week, 11 the third. Fantasy points 18, 23, and 21. Kind of tough to sit that guy. Very tough to sit that guy. Mike Evans, looking at the same pieces of data, targets 6, 9, and 10. Fantasy points 5, 25, and 19. So it's not like he hasn't played well also. I think that Houston is going to have to throw the ball against the Bills. I think the Bills have been a little bit tougher matchup. And also, perhaps Tre'Davious White is the guy that you see on Cooks there. Not that there aren't similar situations that could happen with the New England secondary. But my gut here says Mike Evans. But I can't fault you for Cooks. But based on all those things, those are the reasons behind my thoughts. They have a little bit to do with that jaded Bills fan in me. But I do think that Mike Evans is in line for a good week this week. So I think, yes, I do think you could go either way here, but I personally probably feel that I might lean a little bit towards Mike Evans on this one. Doesn't mean that you might not lean a little bit the other way. Hope that helps you. And then I see a follow-up here. It says, also, do you think Jonathan Taylor and Dalvin Cook are playing? I think Jonathan Taylor will play, although Jonathan Taylor is one of the players that it worries me the most right now at this point in the season, along with guys like Robert Woods, Allen Robinson, you name other guys that are not producing at the level that you would have expected them to. Calvin Ridley, guys that worry you that you're waiting to see actually return the value based on where you drafted them. I think that Taylor will play. I'm a little bit worried that he's possibly going to be on some sort of a pitch count if he's more hurt than we know. But as I look at the reports here, he is listed in the expected to play column where I'm looking at them on the platform I'm on. And Dalvin Cook is listed as a game time decision. Now, that being said, I don't have Dalvin Cook on any rosters, but I have not cut Alexander Mattison yet in the places where I picked him up. And literally in one of my leagues, I am sitting waiting for tomorrow's games because if I literally don't have a defense, you guys that play a lot might do this a lot too, but I have no defense in one of my leagues because I don't want to cut anybody else on my roster, and I want to cut Madison, but I don't have any other options. So I'm literally waiting to find out if what they say about Cook before I pick up a defense in this league. Why am I holding I did this. I'm slowly turning into Matt Patricia, holding onto a pencil while I'm doing these shows. Did you see Nick Sirianni with the neon highlighter in his ear on his hat thing or on his hat or something or other? Like, I feel like he's trying to one up Matt Patricia. Like, I got your pencil right here. Anyways, I don't know where that came from. I think there's a better chance, obviously, that Cook doesn't play. So if you're someone who has Alexander Mattison, I wouldn't do anything drastic right now until we find out. And again, that's a 1:00 game, so you're going to know that right away. And Indianapolis is also a 1:00 game, so we're going to know these answers before you get to game time. I'm happy about that because I would love to have a defense. In my lineup in that one league, so I'm going to be looking at that as well. But I think Jonathan Taylor is certainly in line to play. I think if Dalvin Cook plays, then I think Dalvin Cook is going to be in line for a bigger workload than possibly Taylor. I think that if there's any hint of Taylor not being 100%, I think there's a better chance that they split up the work between Taylor and Heinz. I think if they feel good enough about Cook, we've seen in the past that they are more than willing to give him his full workload. So I think you would see if Cook is good to go, I think you would see a full workload and you'd start him confidently. Of the two, if they both play, which one would I feel less confident? It's Taylor of the two. So that's about the information I can give you on that. I don't know if you're somebody who has, looking for your follow-ups, who has someone like a Madison waiting for you. But yeah, keep an eye on your reports if you do, and hopefully that'll give you the information you need. Thank you, Rolando, for the chats. If you are a new viewer, glad to have you with us and look forward to seeing you back. And again, for all you guys that are watching, I try to say this a couple times each show. Make sure and hit that subscribe button if you enjoy our content so that you can get those notifications whenever we have new content. And also all those likes if you want to drop us a like, and all those subs. They really do help out the channel a ton. And for those of you who are already subscribed, again, we thank you for helping us reach that first milestone goal of 100 subscribers as we start out as a new channel and still growing. So we appreciate all of you for being a part of that. Let me see here from Jonathan Lee on the stream. Welcome back, Jonathan Lee. Who do I flex? Debo, Moss, Patterson, or Pittman? You got some good choices here to pick from. So that's really good. That bodes well for your roster this week. Let's take a look at some stats, see if it helps you out. Debo Samuel for the 49ers against Seattle. The numbers say Seattle 15th in terms of fantasy points to wide receivers. I like Debo a whole lot this year. Again, we've still have a little more of our Saturday Stars content that we haven't done yet, talking about the top matchups. We've done the quarterbacks and the wide receivers. We haven't done the running backs and the tight ends yet. So Zach Moss is somebody that I actually have on the list for running backs. Houston is the opponent. 10th most fantasy points allowed to running backs. I think Zach Moss is in line for a good day tomorrow based on the fact that you expect the game script to be in the favor of Buffalo running the ball. And also it does seem like Moss is the guy they trust in the goal line area there. So I like him as a top matchup. Patterson for Atlanta. Let's see, they play at 1 o'clock as well against Washington. Fantasy points to running back, 25. A little bit lower down than Houston would be. Obviously, 8th fewest. But I think we've seen Patterson's involvement. I don't think that's going away at this point. I think for anybody that thought that Patterson was not really viable or not really a serious thought in fantasy, I think that has been answered at this point. I think that Atlanta is a team that didn't know exactly where they were going when they started the year. And I think a lot of people, including myself, thought that Mike Davis was going to be the guy. And it seems like they have not. They were much more flexible or are being much more flexible in what they decide to do. Patterson, 7 rushes in each of his games this year, but target-wise, 2 the first game and then 7 in the second game and 7 in the third game. And fantasy points, game 2, 24, game 3, 16. They don't have anything listed for game 1, but he clearly must have had something. So that's pretty decent production. Washington, not as good of a matchup, but he is in line for more involvement than a Zach Moss would be. And then Pittman in the Indianapolis matchup. Let's see, we talked about this a little bit already. That's against Miami. Miami, right in the middle, 17th. Pittman's amount of volume he's had in the past 2 weeks. He is probably the guy that has seen the most volume in the past couple of weeks. Again, that might change this week if Miami is a team that they're beating. In past weeks, they may have needed to throw the ball a little bit more than they potentially do this week. And Miami, again, is a tough defense. So Xavier Howard might be the guy that you see matched up with Pittman. So that might affect your choices. I personally like Debo a whole lot. Let me look up his stats just to see if I don't think his stats are really close to what we already looked up earlier for Pittman. So I think that makes you lean towards Pittman in this choice. However, as I say that, Debo Samuel currently is wide receiver 8. And his stats are loading. Here they are. 12 targets, 8 targets, 10 targets. 32 fantasy points, 16 fantasy points, 10 fantasy points. That being said, I know I just talked about Pittman. I know I talked about these other guys. You've got good choices here, so you're in a good spot. I might actually lean towards Debo based on all of the stats that I just looked up and based on the matchup with Seattle, which is decent, not necessarily all the way up to the green, but there are probably less factors that have to go your way with Debo than there are with Moss. So I would probably, let's do this. I would probably, in this order, I would probably say Debo 1, Pittman 2, Patterson 3, Moss 4, which makes it sound like I don't like Patterson and Moss. That's not the case. It's just that you have good choices to pick from here. Like I would very possibly pick Moss in other situations given a different choice to pick against. But Debo's been having good involvement there, and I still feel like all along I felt like he was going back to when we did our drafts, I felt like Debo was the main guy there, and not Brandon Ayuk. And I never really understood why Ayuk was being drafted that much higher than Debo, other than Debo's injuries. So I think especially now, here's the deal, Jonathan. I didn't ask you, and I don't know if you told me if this is PPR, but especially if this is PPR, then yes, Debo. And PPR also makes Patterson more of a thought. The only thing that Standard does, if Standard changes anything, it makes you think more about Moss because of his goal line work. Let me see if there are any follow-ups here. I do see a follow-up here. I'm going to jump around. For those of you that I'm skipping, I will get back to you. Jonathan Lee, who should I start for tight end? Knox, starting Diggs and maybe Moss, Gesicki, Cook, Schultz, Hooper, Ingram. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How many people do you have on your roster, Jonathan? Do you have a 75-man roster? How do you have so many tight ends? Or are you just thinking about these are people on the waiver wire that you're thinking about making a move for? The matchup is good for Knox. We looked at that earlier. Tight end wise, Houston giving up the 4th most fantasy points to tight ends. I don't know how you predict Gesicki at this point because he had like negative targets to start the year and then like 1,000 targets last week. I don't know how you predict what happens there. I think Jarrod Cook is a very reasonable thought. But out of all these guys, we talked about this a little bit earlier tonight. I feel the best about Dalton Schultz in terms of rest of season and every year consistency. I feel the best about Schultz. Now, that being said, his matchup is not quite as good this week. Again, Dallas at Carolina. I'm sorry, Carolina is at Dallas. Carolina, the 5th fewest fantasy points to the tight end spot. So if you like the matchup numbers, Knox has the better matchup. Given the fact that right now we don't know, tight end spot is tough, and we don't know exactly how this is going to continue for these players, I think the matchup is enough to make you consider Knox. But the fact that you're starting Diggs, I feel like I don't know if it's maybe Moss based on everything that we talked about. It still might be obviously maybe Moss, but I think it's probably, and for those of you that are regulars on the stream, you'll know what I think about Evan Ingram. I cannot successfully predict Evan Ingram ever. Never, ever. If I put him on a start list, he plays bad. If I put him on the sit list, he plays great. If he has a great matchup and I like him, I can't figure him out. So I'm not going to pick Evan Ingram off this list for sure. I'm probably not going to pick Hooper either because even though you think he would have more involvement in that offense, I'm never really comfortable with that. It's between Schultz and Knox for me on this list. It would be Gesicki if you felt more comfortable about his volume, but I don't. I think I would probably, if it were me, I would probably pick Schultz, but that might not be your pick because you might like Knox. You might like the matchup better. And you might be able to convince me that I should like the matchup better here if I thought about it long enough on this one. But to me, it's between Schultz and Knox if you're going to narrow that down. I think you could pick either one of them this week. If you like the matchups, then it's Knox for you. But I think the rest of season every week guy is Schultz. I think Schultz has more of a potential to be an every week starter for you. Let's put it that way. All right, Jonathan Lee, let me see if there are any other follow-ups here. Yeah, waiver wire. I was going to say, you can't possibly, if you have all those, and Vansco says, Evan Enigma. I like that one. That's a good one. I never did it yet, but I wanted to see if I could find the clip from Dumb and Dumber where they're in the car and he goes, "You want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?" And then where he like screams, "Ah!" I was going to replace that with Evan Ingram's got a great matchup as the most annoying sound in the world. But I never did that. But wouldn't that have been funny if I did? Maybe not. Anyways, hope that helps you out there, Jonathan Lee. Hope that you are able to get the guy that crushes it for you. I'm scrolling up to make sure that I haven't missed anybody. If I did, let me know. I think I'm okay. I am looking for the next one here. Kicks for Mike says the hardest decision ever. I believe that you are talking about the Jonathan Lee decision. And next up is Vansco. Kicks for Mike says, thanks for the help, bro. I think I might have said that from you before. But either way, I like to get those in. Thank you for being with us. Vansco, full PPR flex situation. Claypool out. Henderson questionable. Have him currently slotted in, as do I, in a bunch of spots. Could also play Gaskin, Jacoby Myers, and Tim Patrick. Need some points because of Cincy D. I think out of those guys that you are thinking about as potential replacements, I like Jacoby Myers there. 29 targets in 3 games. I have him as one of my people on the Saturday Stars for tonight. He has the number 1 matchup for wide receivers going up against Tampa Bay. And that is right here on the left side of your screen. And that is Tampa allowing the very most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. And we've seen a lot of involvement from Myers so far in terms of volume. He leads the team in targets. And I expect New England to have to throw the ball in this game because I expect the Bucks to pour it on against them. So I think that would be my choice, especially for the fact that it's full PPR. I think that I would actually put Tim Patrick second there because I think he's going to have more involvement after the KJ Hamler injury. And I would probably put Gaskin third for the simple fact that we haven't really seen as consistent or as good of production as we would like from him at this point. So that would be probably the way I would order those guys if you had to go that way. But I kind of do agree with you that Henderson, if they are comfortable with his health, is the choice there. I always like playing running back in the flex if possible. I just feel like it gives you a more consistent level, but I do think that Jacoby Myers, I actually think you could talk yourself into a Myers over Henderson there if you thought about it enough. If it were worth your thought of trying to look elsewhere there. So that's my thoughts on that. I think that with Claypool out, I don't know what's going to happen there in Pittsburgh. That's a mystery. And I think I saw a follow-up from you here that said, oh man, all that scrolling. That wasn't what I don't know. Big Ben is terrible was the one that I saw. And you said Juju left late in the second quarter. The Big Ben thing is that's the issue that I have over what's going on there with all those guys, really. Let me see, Vansco. Did I miss everything? I'm scrolling everywhere at this point. I don't think I've missed anybody, but I'm trying to go with and I see you got a couple here, so I'm trying to do yours before I do the next ones here. Hurts losing CMC. I agree with that. Just can't sit Gaskin for the same reason it sucks to sit Allen Robinson. Yeah. I also agree, but I'm not having a difficult time sitting Gaskin at this point because I haven't felt like it's been what I expected out of him. It's been an easier choice for me than it is with Robinson. I think that's all yours, Vansco. I hope that helps you out there with that other one. Let me see what else I got here. Who did I miss? Let's see. Kicks for Mike I got. Jonathan Lee I got. I think I missed KTC Bull. Welcome KTC Bull to the stream. I'm seeing some tweets come in right now from Ian Rappaport from NFL Network saying that Melvin Gordon is expected to play. He was one of the guys that by the way, these guys that do this, I mean, I know it's late here for me, but that's different. Like I'm not like talking to sources like the Ian Rappaports from NFL Network and the Adam Schefter's from ESPN. It's amazing the hours that they work to provide this information. Like for all of us who play fantasy football, it's actually really nice, but you can't imagine. Like I see stuff like pop up and I'm like, it's 4 a.m. in Buffalo or on the East Coast. And here's a report about Melvin Gordon. Like, I guess I get it, but I don't know, man. It's just amazing. But anyway, KTC Bull, looks like you might be a new viewer. So welcome to the stream. Glad to have you. Do you start the Panthers defense? I don't have a graphic for defensive numbers, but I will take a look here on my other screen. Let's see what I can look up here. Against Dallas, I think that Carolina is, to me, of all the defenses who have done well, I think they probably are more trustable at this point. As you know, they might just be not just go, because of who they played. Now, granted, against the Jets, they played Houston, but their fantasy points are 9, 12, and 8 in the first 3 games. Up against Dallas this week, let's see what they say in terms of what Dallas gives up. Dallas gives up the 15th fewest fantasy points to the defensive position, so they're right in the middle. I think there are probably some others. Like if you're streaming a defense this week, I think there are some others who I might favor. I kind of like Miami this week against the Colts. And I've heard this elsewhere. I want to say I might have heard this on NFL Network somewhere else. But believe it or not, I kind of like Detroit this week against the Bears, especially with Justin Fields starting again. Again, it's not so much about the Detroit defense as it is about who they're playing. And a lot of times when you're streaming, that's what you're looking for. Let me just see if there are any others who are not owned in or not rostered in more than 50% that might be available. So I'm going to order these in the order of what they're available and see who's available under 50. Indy is under 50. Let's see. Miami is under 50. You got a bug flying around in here. That's about it. I don't dislike Miami all that much, and I don't dislike Indy all that much, but I think Carolina is right in the same range. So given the fact that production they've had already, then you probably feel good about Carolina there. Dallas is tough. You expect Dallas to put up points against you. So I could see a reason to go away from them. If you felt like if you're a person who likes to stream, if you're a person who likes to stick with the same defense, then I understand where you would go with Carolina because of what they've been doing. But I think there's consideration to go otherwise. I think Dallas is more likely than not going to put up more points against them than they've seen in previous games this year. So you might be able to find somebody on your waiver wire that you feel better about. But if not, it's not like they haven't played well this year. So I don't think it's the worst ever. I just don't know if it's going to be one of those. I don't know that it's going to be one of those weeks where the defense wins your matchup. Kicks from, hope that helps you out there, KTC Bull. Thank you for being on the stream with us. Kicks for Mike, big game from JT and Swift today, I hope also. Yes, I agree with you. I think I like Swift. I like the fact that it seems like Swift is starting to get a little bit more of the edge in terms of workload over Jamal Williams. And, boy, I hope Jonathan Taylor plays well because I've drafted him a couple of spots, and I'm worried at this point. So I know it's a good matchup, but I have considered sitting him for Chuba Hubbard, and I may still do that before the game time starts tomorrow. I think it's very possible that I do that, especially based on what the reports are, because I'm worried about the pitch count. And I think Chuba Hubbard is going to get all the work, and I actually think that he is going to play really well for them while McCaffrey's out. So I could be wrong, and we don't really know. There's not a lot to go on there. It's not like I'm going on data to tell me that. That's just what I think about it. So. But I'm with you there, Kicks for Mike, on both of those. Let me see who else is here. Kicks for Mike, you have another one. Is the Packers defense a good start? I'm a Steelers fan too. Packers, let me see what their numbers look like. Yeah, I'm sure it's reasonable at this point. I mean, if you're basing it on, who they're playing against. Where is Green Bay? They're in the next 25. Let me go back to I had them earlier. When I switched it to all teams instead of all available teams, they went away. So here they are. No, here they aren't. All right, I'll figure this thing out. All players. Green Bay. Where's Green Bay? Why can't I find them on my list? I want to see your stats. Come on. Don't they know I'm doing a live stream? There they are. First week, -4 points. Second week, 6 points. Next week, 7. I had been streaming Green Bay because I liked the matchup with Detroit, and they didn't turn in what I thought they would. Do I think that you're going to see them put up more points against Pittsburgh than they did against Detroit? Not really. On Yahoo, they're projected nicely tomorrow against Pittsburgh, and I understand. I get it. Based on players being out and Roethlisberger's been struggling, but, based on the fact that they're going to throw the ball that much, there's always the chance that they actually play well. They can't, they got to have some good weeks. Here's a report on Dalvin Cook. Told Tom Pelissero, this is from Ian Rappaport, NFL Network, that he expects to play. So there's a report on Dalvin Cook for those of you guys that were asking about that. Things are coming in, popping in you can probably hear the actual notification deal on the thing. Packers defense. I think there are probably others that I would stream over them this week that are probably available, but I don't think they're the worst either. I think they're probably a middle of the road choice. I might be higher on the Steelers than some. I might think more. I don't think the Steelers are as bad of an offense as they've shown so far. I think they're going to put it together at some point. Kicks for Mike, good luck to you. Hope your Steelers do well tomorrow. And hope your fantasy team does better. That sounded great, didn't it? This is you look like a new viewer, and I'm assuming that the O and the other stuff is not a part of your name, that I just go with Aaron here. So Aaron, welcome to the stream. You're asking me AJ Brown for Robert Woods, and I want to think that you're asking me if you should acquire AJ Brown in a trade and offer Robert Woods, and I would say absolutely. If this is a trade that you can get, if I could get that trade, I would try it myself. I might try that. I have already tried some trades to move Robert Woods. He, to me, is a player at this point. If you have him, you are looking for a big game, and he gone. That's the way I see it. Given that opportunity, if Robert Woods plays great this weekend, I am going to probably try to personally, for me, make offers as many places as I can. I have him in a couple of spots, and I just don't feel that his I don't, for whatever reason, it seems like Matthew Stafford the connection with Woods is not clearly what it is with Kupp. But that's not the only issue. I mean, because in the past when Goff was there, Kupp got a lot of work too, but Woods still got his work. But I'm more worried about the fact that Van Jefferson is seeing as much work. Lockett expected to play, just coming in from Ian Rappaport for the Seahawks. At this point, this stream tonight might run right into Sunday pregame, which starts at around 11:30 tomorrow. It's already 4 a.m. in Buffalo, so we might just be doing one continuous stream right until then. We again, the Sunday pregame show is leads up to game time. And anyways, back to this AJ Brown for Robert Woods. Van Jefferson's volume, Deshaun Jackson's volume. Those are as concerning to me as Kupp's volume is, because not only is it that Kupp's the clear leader in targets, I think right now for the Rams, but also that those other guys are right up there with Woods. So Woods not even like a 1B at this point. Like, he's a clear 2 and might not even be 2A. He might just be like a 2A. Is that? I don't know. You know what I'm getting at. Yeah, I'm not sold on Robert Vansico, the first ever 24-hour fantasy football live stream. It could happen. Yes, Aaron, if you can get AJ Brown for Robert Woods, if you have that trade out there available to you right now, take it, hit accept immediately. If you're sending it to somebody, yes, I would love to get that trade myself. I hope you are able to get that. I see a follow-up. I'm going to jump to that before I go to the other ones. Think you can help out. Got Henderson at the RB1, Chuba at the 2, flex is Edmonds, benched Saquon, Jacobs, Jamal Williams, and Zach Moss. I would probably personally want Saquon in that lineup ahead of Chase Edmonds. Let's take a look at the numbers. Let me see what we got here. The New York Giants against New Orleans, 1 o'clock. New Orleans, 27th most fantasy points to the running back spot, 6th fewest. Edmonds for Arizona at the Rams. The Rams are currently, where do we see them? George Kittle says he's playing. These notifications continue to come in from Ian Rappaport from NFL Network, so I'll keep passing them along. The Rams, 22nd. So not a huge difference in matchup there. I think Saquon is clear away the higher tier player there, and I think he is, if not already back at full workload, he is about to be. Jacobs, I think, is too much of a question mark injury-wise. I would take Saquon over Jamal Williams, and I would take Saquon over Zach Moss. To me, I think I want to look at see what Edmonds has been doing lately, but I think Saquon is a clear guy that you got to get in the lineup at this point in the season. I know he's off to a slower start. Let's see here. Chase Edmonds, currently RB16. And his numbers, 12 rushes, 8 rushes, 11 rushes. Targets 4, 5, 8. Fantasy points 15, 13, 15. So, yeah, that's pretty consistent, actually. Again, the matchup, what did I say the matchup numbers were here? Not great, huh? Against the Rams, 22. I don't know. I guess I can see what you're saying here, but Saquon, for as poorly as it seems like he has done fantasy wise this year, he's RB24 for a guy who's coming back from injury and has been on a pitch count. He's only 8 spots behind Edmonds. I'm trying to open his stats from last week to see what he did here, but my computer's not really cooperating all that much. Yeah, so it's not even opening them at all, but there we go. Wow. Last week, 16 rushes for 51, 7 targets, 6 catches with a touchdown, 21 points. Clear uptick from week to week. 4 points the first week, 9 the second, 21 the third. I don't expect that to. I mean, you know what Saquon Barkley would be if he was fully healthy, and if he's back to that level, or if they're back to where they're giving him a full workload, then I would probably trust him over Edmonds here. I like your Henderson and I like your Chuba. I was talking about Chuba before. I think of all those other guys there. If you're going flex, you got Saquon Barkley as a flex. I think that's a pretty good situation for you based on where he was drafted. So that would be my only thought there. I can't fault you if you're not comfortable with him with where he's at yet, and you like Edmonds because it does. You have seen pretty consistent production there from Edmonds. But I think for me, I might think about making that a Saquon. But whichever you go there. I hope that information helps you out a little bit, and I hope that the guys you go with there, they crush it for you. All right, let me jump back over here. First of all, let me get rid of this graphic. And I skipped over one while I was hitting that file up there, and that is from King Rubes. King Rubes, welcome. And your question here is, how are we feeling about Hunt this week? Currently having the flex over Sutton. Do I agree on that? Yeah. I usually like to have a running back flex. I feel like that's more consistent production. Boy, my computer is really... Apparently, the computer doesn't like the 24-hour live stream format because it is not really cooperating all that much right now. There we go. Wow. Let's see what the matchup numbers say here. For Hunt against Minnesota. Hunt, of course, had a very nice game last week. Minnesota currently 17th in terms of fantasy points to the running back spot, right in the middle. Again, I think this game potentially has points involved, which could mean some out-of-the-backfield work for Hunt, which is, of course, that's more him than Chubb. If we look at the Sutton matchup for Denver against Baltimore, it's a later game. Baltimore 19th, so just over halfway point again in terms of fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. I could see an argument, especially if it's PPR, to go Sutton here because you might feel that the volume might be more based on the fact that you've now lost also KJ Hamler there. We did see Sutton have that really big game. Didn't have as big a game last week. I could see because of the fact that Hunt is, you consider Hunt to be the number 2 guy there behind Chubb, but I also think that most of the time that's not really a knock on Hunt. I don't think that, I do think Chubb is the main guy, and there are some times where Hunt is not going to have as big of a game. I'm looking for Hunt's numbers. Why do I not see Hunt? He can't be that far down the list. Chubb is currently 9th. Wow. Where is Kareem Hunt? And it's not in the top 20. How is Kareem Hunt not in the top 20? I don't even see him. Am I losing my mind? I'm completely. I have no idea why. There he is. He's in. Kareem Hunt's in. Who did I say was in 7th? Chubb's in 9th. Hunt is in 7th. He's ahead of him. What am I doing here? Yeah. 6 rushes, 13 rushes, 10 rushes, 3 targets, 1 target, 7 targets. Fantasy points 17, 6, 28. I feel fine about that. More consistent than Sutton probably. If it were PPR. Even Hunt in a PPR format should be good, should be fine. So, yeah, I don't feel like you're wrong going that direction. I think it's possible you could talk yourself into a Sutton in a PPR, but I don't think you're wrong with Hunt there. Hope that helps you out there, King Rubes. Let me see who's next up in line here. Again, we still have a little bit more content before we wrap up the stream tonight, talking about Saturday stars. We've done the quarterbacks, we've done the wide receivers. We didn't do the running backs or the tight ends yet. We will do that at some point when we get close to all of the rest of these chats. Let me see if I didn't miss anybody here. Then I think next up here is the Vansco. Do you think Heinz over Gaskin? Hate to depend on two Colts players. I could sit Pittman and play AB and Juju, but Pittman is getting so many targets. I might think Heinz over Gaskin here. But see, that's the thing is that Heinz over Gaskin is not going to be based on like numbers. I don't see any way to base that on numbers. It's more on like, what do we think Jonathan Taylor has? Do we think there's an issue with Taylor that means Heinz is going to get more work? Because the matchup wise, Miami second most fantasy points to running back. It's a good matchup, but you also expect Colts to be playing with the lead, which means a more run game with Taylor than pass game out of the backfield for Heinz. Heinz's numbers have been good, 14-3-9 fantasy points. Gaskin's numbers, let's see what we have for Gaskin. I didn't look those up yet. How far down the list would he be? Looking. Heinz in 22nd. Gaskin in 31st. Not that all that far behind. 13, 9, and 10 fantasy points in a row. Had some targets too, 5, 5, and 6 in terms of targets. So that's tough because if anything, man, I don't know. You think that Indy is winning this game. I think that's what I would think here. And that means that Gaskin out of the backfield, since he's been seeing targets, you might be, if they're playing with the lead, you might be Gaskin running the ball. If they're playing from behind, you might be Gaskin catching passes. And with Heinz, you might be possibly not both. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying with playing two Colts. I could see you going Gaskin over Heinz because I wish Gaskin was playing better. I expected him to play better this year than he has so far. I would feel a lot more confident in answering that way because I like Gaskin. He just hasn't really turned in the results. And I think you have to trust the targets with Pittman. I don't think you can sit him. And there's a lot of questions with AB and Juju. So, yeah, I think it goes down to the other two. And I might diversify. I might feel the same way as you, is that diversifying there by taking Gaskin makes the difference, even if you feel like Heinz is also going to play well. I might consider going with Gaskin there and just hoping that he plays a little bit better. I just think it's tough to predict when Heinz. Hope that helps you out there, Vansco. Kicks for Mike says Cowboys D is on there and Cleveland. I think Cowboys D, let's see, against Carolina and Cleveland against Minnesota. I don't know that I like Cleveland all that much. Let's see what Carolina has given up in terms of their numbers. 9th fewest fantasy points to the defense. I do think that Dallas's defense has played better. 7, 7, and 13 are their numbers. And they put up 7 against Tampa. They put up 7 against the Chargers. Those are good teams, in my opinion, to put up numbers like that against. So I do think that might be a decent floor. It's shocking to me that we're thinking about playing Dallas's defense this year. Put up 13 against Philadelphia. I might consider Dallas if that's a choice that's available to you. I don't think I would consider Cleveland because although Cleveland has put up good numbers, I mean, they did it against a really bad offensive game from Chicago. The other two games, they really didn't do much. 1 against Kansas City and 5 against Houston. He only put up 5 against Houston. Dallas did what they did against a couple of good teams. I might feel good about Dallas there. Kicks for Mike. I would consider that. I think it makes some sense. Whichever way you go there, again, hope they crush it for you. I think it might make more sense than relying on Carolina against a Cowboys team that you expect to be always have a lot of offensive firepower. Andrew, welcome to the stream, Andrew. Thank you for the chat. Looks like you might be a new viewer. Glad to have you with us. Andrew, you say start 2, Hopkins, Gaskin, Galladay, Sermon, Jamal Williams, PPR. I will have to say Hopkins. I think you've got to. I'm sorry, jumping over King Rubes. See, this is what I like about these live streams is that I don't mean to jump away from your chat, Andrew, but when I was looking up these stats, like you guys sometimes are faster to find this stuff than I am. King Rubes is above Chubb, 7th in standard. So you found him right away. Appreciate that. Let me see. Andrew, you say start 2. Hopkins to me is, I think, a guy you got to have, even though I know last week didn't give you much. But DeAndre Hopkins is an awful good player to to want to be sitting there watching your games on Sunday while he's on your bench and being like, oh, what did I do? Right. So I think that Hopkins, I think you got to have him in your lineup. I don't think Gaskins, I don't think you have to have him in your lineup. Galladay, I wish was playing better. I don't know why the Giants bothered to get him if they're not going to involve him. If there's any week that Galladay's going to turn it around, it's this week. We've got no Sterling Shepard. We've got no Darius Slayton. So this is a great week for Galladay to turn it around. That being said, Trey Sermon, if Eli Mitchell doesn't play, Trey Sermon should be the guy here that gets the volume. I hope, again, with San Francisco, sometimes you don't get what you expect out of their running game. And based on they decide to play players, like all of a sudden players are out, healthy scratch. Like, what's going on? Like, we've seen this a lot of times. So that's something you have to live with if you're going to decide to play Trey Sermon. But however, I feel that volume-wise, I think Sermon is the next guy to me on this list because you would expect him to be the guy most likely to have the shot at that number one spot. In terms of fantasy points, the running back spot, if you look at San Francisco playing against Seattle, Seattle is the number one fantasy points to the running back spot this year. So that means if Sermon does get the volume like we think he might, he has a good opportunity to put up a good game. And I'm certainly sure that he hopes to have a good game because that gives him an opportunity to kind of solidify himself back in that backfield, and hopefully the coaching staff is no longer upset with him. Jamal Williams for Detroit. I like Jamal Williams, but he's always splitting time with Swift. Playing against Chicago, the matchup is probably not quite as good. 18th there on the left side of your screen. I'll take a look at the matchup for Galladay just to compare. Giants playing at 1 o'clock against New Orleans. New Orleans sits at 14 in terms of fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. And then we'll compare Gaskin for Miami against Indianapolis. And Indianapolis falls at 20th to the running back spot. So the matchup edge is to Sermon. You got to think if Eli Mitchell was out, which he's expected not to play tomorrow, that means the volume edges to Sermon. So I think of these players, I think I would think Hopkins and Trey Sermon out of these guys here. Hope that helps you out, Andrew. And certainly, like I always say, you guys know your rosters as well as anybody. But I do like to try to give a little bit of information to back up my my thoughts. And hopefully that leads you towards the guys that you like the best for your team. So I think if it were me, I'd probably lean Hopkins and Sermon here. I think both of those fine starts, and hope that whichever guys you go with there, Andrew, hope they crush it for you. All right, James Martin says Hunt is boom or bust. I kind of agree with that a little bit, but I think that I think there are going to be far fewer bust games for Hunt than there are for other guys that we consider boom or bust, like a Tyler Lockett type player. I do think there are going to be weeks when, Nick Chubb just lights it up. You're going to have to live with that. It's always a possibility. Gaskin has been such a disappointment, says Vansco. The man who helped secure my championship game, holding on to hope. I am also. I have him in a couple places. I would not cut him. I would consider trading him if there was the opportunity. Trades are always in play. But I do think that I don't think that he is out of the woods, so to speak. Is that a good, it's late. Big Oos. Am I saying that right? Big Use? I try to get these names right. I hope that I do. I know your boy Mari, I completely had that wrong one night. And then I watched the stream back, and I'm like, well, how didn't I figure that out? I figured it out. Big Use, I'm going to go with. If I'm wrong, Big Use, then I hope that you might be able to tell me how I'm supposed to be saying that. But you say, welcome to the stream, by the way. Looks like you might be a new viewer, so welcome. Flex, full PPR, Corey Davis, Antonio Brown, or Robert Woods. Speaking of out of the woods, here's the stats for the wide receiver spot. Revenge game for Davis. Against Tennessee. Tennessee currently giving up the third most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. If the quarterback play, if you could feel more confident about the quarterback play in New York there with Zach Wilson, that would be my answer instantly because of the matchup. And because the other two guys, to me, there are some question marks. The problem is that the quarterback play there is so inconsistent right now that, Corey Davis can disappear really easily. Antonio Brown for the Bucs against New England, 28th, fifth fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. I think there are a lot of mouths to feed there. I think it's a guessing game as to when you're going to have good games and not good games out of Brown, so I probably don't trust him. I don't think it's not really a whole lot different than Davis, actually, just for different reasons. And Robert Woods, the matchup there for the Rams is fantastic. Arizona currently giving up the 10th most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. Robert Woods should be somebody that you trust, and he should be the answer to this question. Problem is he's not, because we haven't seen it this year. And until we see it, with a new quarterback, how do we know? I mean, at some point, defenses are going to start shutting down Cooper Kupp, and then we're going to find out who the Rams go to when they shut down Cooper Kupp. That hasn't happened yet, and we haven't seen Woods' volume be anywhere near probably what it needs to be. So I can't feel like I can answer this question as Woods, even though he should be the answer. To me, the person I probably answer this because of the matchup is actually Corey Davis against Tennessee. And then you have to live with the fact that you have to consider that, yes, the quarterback play could be bad. And if the other team is catching the ball more than the Jets players are, that's not going to bode well for Davis. But given the fact that you expect Davis to be the number one receiver there, they're probably going to have to throw the ball a lot most weeks. He should get his opportunities, even though he hasn't seen it every week. I probably have to pick Corey. I almost said Robert Woods. I probably have to pick Corey Davis in this situation if it were me. Hope that helps you out, Big Use. Big Use. I'm not really sure if I'm saying that right either way. But either way, I hope I got your name right, and I hope that information helps lead you towards the player that you want to play in that matchup tomorrow. All right, Vansco, Jalen Ramsey won't shadow Hopkins all game. He's been playing 50% of the snaps against the slot, so Kirk will get it. James Martin, you say Allen Robinson or Kareem Hunt. PPR, it's got to be Kareem Hunt. I know he's boom or bust, but I can't trust Allen Robinson at this point. And based on what Kareem Hunt has done so far this season versus what Allen Robinson has done, until we see things get better in Chicago, I can't see picking him over Hunt in this situation. Yes, of course, Hunt can, like we talked about before, can have those games where, Chubb just plays that well that he simply doesn't get enough opportunity. But I don't think that's going to happen every week. And I think it's going to happen fewer weeks that way than it goes well for him. And right now we just don't see it from Robinson. So I think until we see it from Robinson, without even looking at matchups, I will put the matchups up just to take it into consideration. Chicago against Detroit. Detroit 21st in terms of fantasy points to wide receivers. And then Cleveland running back stats. Let's see here. Cleveland, Minnesota. Minnesota is 17th. So they're both kind of in the middle of the road. I think to me it's Hunt based on what we looked up earlier in terms of the actual workload that they've been getting. I think I probably like Hunt a little bit more in this situation. Hope that helps you out, James. Whichever guy you go with there, I do hope they crush it for you. My computer is really not liking me at this point. And James Martin says, I can't believe this is a question. I'm assuming you're saying this because of the fact that Allen Robinson shouldn't be playing this bad. I think that's what you mean by that. That's the way I would look at it. Allen Robinson, it's just not going well right now. We talked about this on an earlier live stream. I can't imagine that Matt Nagy is not on the hot seat soon in terms of the way things have gone with that quarterback deal there. Like, it just doesn't seem like it's going well at all. So, yeah, I think this is he's got to turn it around. But right now he's not. And, again, Allen Robinson is a guy that if you got him, you might be waiting for a big game and then looking to hit that trade button if you can. Or if not, doing it now. We'll see what happens. Hope that helps you out there, James. I'm going to go ahead and hit the rest of our content here and finish up with our top matchups, as it is about that time where we're going to need to start getting ready for our Sunday pregame show pretty soon. So let me get this banner off of there. We got some matchups to go through still. For those of you that are watching live, if you're watching on replay, this is the continuation of our top matchups portion of the show. We've gone through quarterbacks and wide receivers. Again, the name of the show is Saturday Stars. It's not necessarily start sit, but it is the players with the top matchups for this weekend. Again, I don't really include players that are like people that are auto starts if they have good matchups because they're obvious. These are players that you might be questioning if they're on the fringe for you or not, and you might want to get into your lineups. Players that have a good amount of opportunity based on their matchups. So at the running back spot, we start out. These are not in order of how I rank them. They're basically in the order of the matchups. Trey Sermon, for the 49ers, especially if Mitchell doesn't play. I think a very good matchup here for Sermon. Seattle giving up the most fantasy points to the running back spot this year. They have given up 14 or more fantasy points to 4 different players this year, including 47 looks like I wrote down 7-0 to Derrick Henry in week 2. 47 or 49, whatever rate, it was a ton. So certainly a good matchup here for Trey Sermon. If he does end up getting the bulk of the work, an opportunity for him to kind of show his ability there this week for the 49ers. Next up on the line, again, talked about this a little bit before. Certain players you wouldn't really include on this list because Jonathan Taylor, like, yeah, of course, Jonathan Taylor. Like, I got no question about if I'm starting him or not. Well, there might be a question right now whether or not you want to start Jonathan Taylor. So I've got him on the list in terms of Saturday stars for top matchups. We have to hope this is a week where Taylor starts to turn it on, playing against the Dolphins, who are currently giving up the second most fantasy points to the running back spot. They've given up 15 plus to 3 different running backs, including 23-2 to Peyton Barber last week from the Raiders. Jonathan Taylor has yet to find the end zone this season. You have to hope that this is a week when Taylor turns it around. Certainly if you are rostering Jonathan Taylor, which many of you who are spent a very high draft pick on him, perhaps your first pick overall, not the number 1 pick, obviously, but your first pick that you made. You got to hope that this starts to turn around for Taylor because you need to see more out of him for where you drafted him in order to find success in your fantasy league. So let's see if this is an opportunity for Jonathan Taylor. Miles Sanders for the Eagles up against the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City giving up the 3rd most fantasy points to the running back spot. They have given up 17 or more to 3 different running backs this year. Sanders, again, another guy that has not found the end zone this season. So again, good opportunity here in that offense for the Eagles this week and see if Sanders can take advantage of his nice matchup. David Montgomery for the Bears going up against the Lions. The Lions currently giving up the 6th most fantasy points to the running back spot. They have allowed 16 or more to 2 different running backs this year, including 41.50 to Aaron Jones in week 2. Montgomery has rushed for 100 yards once this year already. Good opportunity there against the Lions defense in a game that, well, Chicago may need him because who knows what else they're going to get besides him. So perhaps Montgomery will get all the work this week. Nonetheless, a good opportunity here for him. Here's a guy I've got here based on not only the matchup, but also the fact that Melvin Gordon is a little banged up. And even if he does play, you might see the split in work go a little bit more in favor of Javonte Williams this week from the Denver Broncos. They're playing against the Baltimore Ravens at home. The Ravens allowing the 7th most fantasy points to the running back spot. They've given up 14 or more to 3 different running backs this year. I think Javonte Williams has an opportunity to have a real good week early on. A lot of people expect him to kind of take over more of the bulk of the work there sometime later in the season. Perhaps this is a week that kind of gets that started for him. Chris Carson for the Seahawks, a good matchup here against the 49ers. 8th most fantasy points to running backs from San Francisco. They've given up 17 or more to 3 different running backs this year, and Carson has had 12 or more each of his games. I like the matchup here for Carson. And also we talked a little bit earlier about Zach Moss for the Bills. Again, top matchup here going up against Houston, 10th most fantasy points to the running back spot. I think a good chance to see some goal line touches and also game script to be in their favor there for the Bills this week. And that is our running back top matchups. Let's move right in as we wrap this up to the tight end spot. Saturday Stars top matchup at the tight end position. Noah Fant from the Denver Broncos against Baltimore. The Ravens giving up the most fantasy points to the tight end spot this year. Again, sometimes early in the year, this is not necessarily reflective overall of the defense, but possibly more about who they played, since they have already played Darren Waller and Travis Kelce, and Waller put up 26.5 and Kelce put up 23.9. It's no surprise that they are currently giving up the most points. Later on in the year, they might not be quite as high, but nonetheless, it still seems to be a good matchup for Fant, who has seen 13 targets this season in 3 games. So look for Noah Fant as one of your top matchups this weekend at the tight end spot. We talked earlier about Dawson Knox for the Bills going up against Houston. The Texans allowing the 4th most fantasy points to tight ends this year. Knox has had a touchdown in each of his last 2 games, a player that looks like he might be starting to lean into his potential just a little bit. Got to keep an eye on. Logan Thomas from the Washington football team going up against Atlanta, who are giving up the 7th most fantasy points. Update on Dalvin Cook expected to play, according to Adam Schefter from ESPN, just came in. Back to Logan Thomas at Atlanta, 7th most fantasy points, given up by the Falcons. They've given up 14 or more to 2 tight ends this year, and Logan Thomas has had a touchdown in 2 of his 3 games. And finally, Cole Kmet for the Bears against Detroit. The Lions giving up the 9th most fantasy points to the tight end spot, and they've given up, it looks like I wrote down 11 or more each game to tight ends, which you would take that if you're streaming tight ends at this point. So Cole Kmet, a guy I've got a Saturday Stars top matchup for this weekend. That is it for the tight ends and running backs. We've got, let's see, another tweet from Adam Schefter from ESPN. George Kittle will play versus the Seahawks per source. George Kittle looks like will play in this weekend's matchup for the 49ers. Kind of was expected to play all along, I think. So that's not too much of a surprise, although I'm looking over here to see what looks like it was listed as a game time decision on the platform I'm looking on. So some information there. There will be a lot of Adam Schefter is tweeting everything from ESPN. Elijah Mitchell will be out Sunday versus the Seahawks per source. So Elijah Mitchell looks like will be out for the 49ers. We expected that as he was listed as doubtful. Perhaps I should do these live streams at this time of night all the time on Saturday because all the reports are coming in, and I got to be the first one giving them out other than actually Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport right now. So if you're watching the Fantasy Follow, like this is your spot right now for all the notifications. I should just keep looking at my screens to see what pops up next. Pretty good stuff there. It's going to help me out because I got to set some lineups myself. Nonetheless, that is all of our content for the show tonight. We did all of our Saturday Stars, the top matchups. We thank you all for the chats. We got a ton of good chats tonight, so we appreciate all you guys for being on the stream. Let's go ahead and remind you again before we end the stream tonight about our 6 picks. And this is actually the thumbnail for this week's 6 picks. So if you're looking for that video, you can find it by searching, or you can find it on the channel here if you look at our channel selection. And the 6 picks game, again, is very simple. We'll put up the rules. It's basically 6 different fantasy matchups between individual players that occur within the same games. You pick the winners to all 6 of those matchups, and you pick your winners in the comments section on that video. Again, the link to that video is in the description area below here. You can go straight from this stream to that video to make your picks, but they must be made on that video in order for us to count them so we can keep track. And you're using PPR scoring. We'll keep those standings all season long. The picks will remain open until 1 Eastern time on Sunday, which is now, of course, today in a few hours. And here is the current leaderboard in the 6 picks game. Chris Noriega leading the way, followed by Vansco, who's on our stream tonight with us in the chat, and then Bill Romanowski. That is the current leaderboard, but this is your opportunity to get in week 4 and start climbing up that leaderboard and make your way, get your name up there with the 6 picks competition. Again, those picks will be open until 1 o'clock. We'll talk about that again more on the Sunday pregame show as well. All right, guys, it's been a really good night of Saturday Stars. We appreciate all of you for being with us. We got a great day of football ahead tomorrow/today, whichever way you want to look at it. Sunday pregame show starts around 11:30. More chat, more questions from you guys. A whole bunch of other stuff for y'all. We look forward to that, and then we look forward to some great games on tap. So absolutely, let's hope that we can all get those lineups that we need them to be, and let's all go out and get a W in week 4. So as we always say, good luck in fantasy. We'll see you next time.